Hi, welcome back guys. This is your friend, Salty Fanfics, back with amazing fanfiction. This is the series of What If Deku Had String Manipulation Quirk. Now before starting, please give this video a like and subscribe to the channel if you want more videos like this. Now let's get into the fanfic. Izuku Midorya didn't exactly have the time of his life for the past 3 months. You see, in the past 3 months a not so pleasant sequence of events came to pass. Izuku's best friend Katsuki Bakugo gained his explosion quirk. As the name implies, he could generate explosions from his hands. He was immediately praised by everyone for having a powerful quirk. Soon after, Izuku was diagnosed as quirkless. Then Katsuki became a different person who started with the letter B. He became a bully. He used his quirk, you know, the one that generates explosions that can hurt people, and turned it on his former best friend for the sole fact that he couldn't fight back. He also called him a useless piece of shit, among other things. This type of behavior continued on for 3 months, which leads us to today. Today, Izuku was minding his own business going through the lunch line and actually made it through without any fuss. You know, maybe today is when things start looking up, our green-haired protagonist thought to himself. Little did he know that fate is a fickle little beach who would not be smiling upon him today. Immediately after he sat down, he was surrounded by Katsuki and his posse. The explosive boy himself set a fruit that looked similar to a gourd with swirly patterns covering it on his tray. He then spoke his intentions with a tone of mock kindness. "Hey there, Deku. I know things have been real rough for you lately, so I got you a present. Eat up, buddy." That last word was spoken with undeniable venom, promising punishment if the request was refused. Izuku, however, while smarter than the average bear, was too young and inexperienced to pick up on such subtlety. Oh, I really appreciate it, Kaken. But I wasn't feeling too hungry today, so I only got a small lunch. The explosive blonde took exception to this and did what any sane person would do. He forced the fruit down his ex-friend's throat and verbally flamed him. "Listen here, Deku. You quirkless piece of shit, you don't get to turn down my commands, you hear that?" he said as the green-haired boy in question was coughing after being force-fed the weird fruit. He then did the responsible thing and set off an explosion in his face. Everyone watched the spectacle and saw the young boy on the ground crying. But no one did anything. It wasn't their problem after all. The rest of the day continued similarly. Katsuki continued to bully Izuku and everyone else pretended not to notice. On his way home, after another verbal beating, Izuku saw All Might, his lord, savior, and heroic inspiration, taking down a villain with a minor flame quirk that only covered his hands up to his forearms. What luck too, as he was the only one to see this. Before All Might could leave, Izuku called out to him. All Might, oh my gosh, that was so cool. Can I please get your autograph, sir?" Izuku asked in a hero worship-fueled frenzy. "Why, of course, my boy. What is your name?" the hero asked while signing his fanboy's notebook. Izuku Midorya. "All Might, is it okay if I ask a question?" All Might chuckled before responding. "But of course, young Midorya, although I must ask that you make it quick, as I do need to bring this villain to justice." Izuku, without stuttering and a fire in his eye, asked, "Can I be a hero even though I'm quirkless?" With slight hesitation, All Might responded, "With all the dangers that heroes face day to day, and after all the villains I have encountered, I have to say no, it is far too dangerous for a quirkless person to be a hero. Although that shouldn't stop you from striving to help people, perhaps you could join the police force. It certainly isn't as glamorous as being a hero, but it is a noble profession nonetheless. Goodbye, my boy," and with that he took off. Now, if Izuku had heard this later in life, he might have been able to bear with it. But as a 4-year-old bully victim, he couldn't bear it and started crying as he made his trek home. However, it seemed that fate didn't had enough fun yet, as he got home to see his apartment on fire. You see, the flame villain All Might had beaten and left a spark that grew into a raging inferno. The boy immediately ran towards his door to see if his mother had made it to safety. But what he saw through the window, however, pushed him over the edge. His mother was on the ground unconscious as the building blazed. He didn't know how, but he knew he needed to get inside and save his mom. So color him surprised when thin-eye invisible wires sprouted from his fingertips and cut the door to pieces. Not looking the gift horse in the mouth, he sent the threads towards his mother, while unconsciously changing their properties so they wouldn't hurt her, and pulled her out of the blaze right as the roof collapsed, narrowly saving her. He did his damnedest to bring her away so the recently arrived firefighters and paramedics could help her. Immediately they got to work trying to save the boy's mother. Mitsuki Bakugo found the boy and comforted him while they waited. Her husband was still at work and her son was still out with his posse. It was only after the firefighters stopped the blaze did one of the paramedics approach the pair. "Excuse me, young man, are you related to the woman you brought to us?" Mitsuki was the one who answered for the boy. "Yeah, this is her kid Izuku, and I'm her best friend Mitsuki. Is she okay? How is she?" the blonde woman said as she was flooded with worry. "I'm sorry, we tried our best to bring her back, but the smoke inhalation killed her. You have my condolences." And with the bomb dropped, the paramedic left the pair to grieve as they broke down. After crying for an unknown amount of time, Mitsuki brought Izuku back home with her and drew a bath for him while putting on a brave face for the young boy who was clearly distraught. Here's a bath, Izuku. I know you're sad, but Inko would want you to be strong, like a hero would be. I know it hurts, but so long as you always keep her in your heart, she'll never truly be gone. Izuku sniffled for a bit before giving Mitsuki the best smile he could muster. Thanks, Aunt Mitsuki, I'll do my best. He gave the blonde woman another big hug before she left him to his bath. However, he started to feel weak as he got into the bath. It wasn't until Mitsuki came to check on him that she realized the gravity of the situation. There he was under the water, unmoving. She immediately pulled him out as he took in several deep breaths, thankfully not coughing as no water had made it into his lungs. Gone was the sympathetic friend, and out came the worried mother in the lady. Izuku, would you mind telling me exactly what the actual F that little stunt was? She questioned, not pulling any punches. However, Izuku's response perplexed her. I don't know, he said simply. Mitsuki took exception to this, however. The F do you mean you don't know? I mean, I don't know. Once I settled and I kept feeling weaker and weaker until I couldn't move. It took everything I had to hold my breath. The green-haired boy responded. I don't know how, but I think it might be a drawback for my quirk. This perplexed Mitsuki as last she heard the boy was quirkless. I thought the doctors diagnosed you as quirkless. They did. But when I saw Mom through the window, I just thought that I had to save her, and then these wires. He then demonstrated his newfound powers to his bully's mother, which earned a look of surprise from the lady. Came out of my fingers and cut the door down. But when they wrapped around my mother, they didn't hurt her at all, which means that I may have unconsciously changed the properties, which means, and he just mumbled the rest while they walked to the living room and he put on some clothes. It was at this moment that fate decided that 3 times wasn't enough. Fate decided that it needed to piss in Izuku's cereal 4 times today. Because just then Katsuki came home, and once the bath situation was explained, the explosive boy had a field day. Izuku, however, wasn't having it today. With a feat of strength that surprised everyone who saw it, Izuku decked Katsuki right in the jaw, knocking him to the ground before running out of the house to God knows where. It was at this point in time that Mitsuki went off on the piece of human that she had the displeasure of calling her child and explained everything that had happened. Aunt Inko is dead, the boy said with tears in his eyes. Now don't get him wrong, he thought his ex-friend was basically a second-class citizen. But he loved the kid's mother as much as, if not more than, his own. He didn't feel bad for making fun of the fact that Deku was so useless he couldn't swim, no. He just wished he waited a day or two. After a thorough beating from his mother and a tongue lashing from his father, who received an explanation upon returning home, the Bakugo family proceeded to search for Izuku. Granted, Katsuki didn't try overly hard, as he didn't particularly care for our green-haired protagonist. It wasn't until Izuku didn't come to school for a week that Katsuki realized the gravity of what he did. Not that it mattered to him. Flashing back a week and a couple hours to when Izuku bolted from the Bakugo house, he just ran. And ran, wanting nothing to do with the blonde bully he had put up with for the past 3 months. Until he ran into an older boy with red hair and he fell back. I am really sorry, I wasn't looking where I was going, the green-haired boy apologized while sniffling and crying. The boy he ran into didn't respond, but the smaller boy, with half white and half red hair and a bandage over his left eye, who looked about his age, did. Why are you crying? He asked. It was an honest mistake. Despite not telling anyone for 3 months, he was well over the edge at this point. And my mom just died, and my bully made fun of me anyway. And All Might told me I couldn't be a hero, and then from he dropped the bombshell that was the entire day upon the 2 brothers. Both siblings, appalled at the life he led up to this day, comforted the boy. After he calmed down, Izuku introduced himself. I'm sorry for not introducing myself sooner, I'm Izuku Midorya. The older boy answered first. There's no need to apologize, kid, you've had a rough day, and that's lightly. The name's Taya Todoroki, and this is my little brother Shoto. Pleased to meet you, Midoriya, the half-haired boy said, to which Izuku responded likewise. I can understand that you don't want to go back to your bully's house, so why don't you come with us? It's dangerous for someone your age to be out and about by yourself. Oh no, I couldn't possibly impose on your family like that. However, the younger Todoroki took exception to that. Who cares about our family? Shoto said with venom that rivaled Izuku's feelings for Katsuki. Izuku looked confused before Taya intervened and explained their relationship towards Endeavor and the treatment they receive. In doing so, pulled off the fake layer of skin that covered all of his purple burn scars. Izuku was furious at this. Furious at the thought of a parent treating their children that way. But even more furious at the fact that Katsuki was on the path to becoming another Endeavor. He was so furious, in fact, that his wires sprouted from his fingertips and cut a nearby streetlight, stop sign, and fire hydrant to pieces. After recovering from the destruction-induced shock, Taya gave Izuku an offer. We know why you ran away, and you know why we ran away. So why don't you stick with us? Izuku answered without hesitation. Of course, we're 3 peas in a pod after all, he said while adopting a warm, but also intimidating smile that would soon be commonplace on the boy's facial features. Soon after that, the boys found an abandoned warehouse to stay in. After much discussion, all three agreed that it would do as a place to stay since both Todorokis had quirks that could keep them warm, Shadow could cool them down if needed, and Izuku's could likely make any repairs that may be needed. Now their only problem was food and water. Or so you would think. What I mean, or so we would think, Midoriya asked Tauya as he was very confused. Well, you see, as we were walking I saw a guy getting beat on, so I used my quirk to stop the attacker so the other guy could get away. Riveting. But how does this solve our money problem? And Izuku gave his newly signature smile. I may or may not have swiped the attacker's wallet with my quirk, and there it was, a wallet with enough money to last them for a month, floating in midair with the only sign of the wires being the occasional light that reflected off of them. And with that Izuku committed his first crime. Shadow was a little upset before Izuku explained himself. We don't have jobs. All we have is each other. Even though I only met you guys today, you've been nicer to me than someone I've known my entire life. Besides, with your a whole of a father being the number 2 hero and my piece of sit bully being praised for having great hero potential, what better way to get back at them than by being villains? The Todoroki brothers thought about this before Tauya gave a wicked grin and Shadow gained a small smile, wherein they both said simultaneously. Izuku responded with his own signature grin. Great, I'd hate to lose you guys so soon. Now for names, he said while stroking his chin. Names? We already have those, Shadow asked confusedly. He's talking about villain names, Shadow, the names the public will know us by. How about Dabi for me, is that good, Midoriya? Izuku grinned once more. Very clever, but please call me Izuku, we are family now after all. Then you can call Shadow and I by our names too. That's a nice smile you got, how about you be Joker? Izuku's grin grew even wider before shouting I love it, and cackling like a madman. Shadow smiled at the fun his blood brother and his new green-haired brother were having. Big bro, what about my name? He asked, excited by the naming process. However, it was Izuku who answered. How about Freezer Burn? Tauya gave a look that said not bad, but Shadow was overjoyed. That sounds so cool. Izuku laughed at his new brother's excitement and Tauya smiled warmly at the happiness his new brother brought. Well boss, what next? The scarred boy asked. Izuku was surprised at this. Shouldn't you be the boss since you're the oldest? But you came up with this idea, so it's only fitting that you become the boss. Yay, besides you're really cool, Izuku, you'll make a great boss, Shadow said in agreement. Well, first off, Tauya, you can take off the fake skin. You shouldn't hide from it since, well, I'm sure it was painful. It's a reminder of why we're doing what we're doing. Since your father meant for the scars to be a punishment, shouldn't you wear them with pride since you aren't letting him keep you down? Tauya smiled and immediately let all his scars out for all to see while Shadow took the bandage off of his own long-healed scar with a smile of his own. Izuku beamed, not at all deterred by the scars his new brothers had. Our next order of business is training. Shadow flinched at the T word, but Izuku already expected such an outcome. Don't worry, Shadow, I don't mean the same training that your father put you through. He's right, little brother, Dad may have been over the top, but if we're gonna be villains, then we need to be able to fight and use our quirks to the best of our abilities. Izuku was happy with Tauya's explanation and Shadow agreed shortly after, and thus their training began. This isn't a story of heroes. This also isn't a story of villains. This, dear readers, is a story of family. A lot has occurred over the past 10 years. Shadow and Tauya, who preferred to be called Dabi over his real name, both renounced the Todoroki name and chose their boss's family name. The newly renamed Midoriya family started their life of villainy small, with crimes like mugging people on the street and carving out their own territory. 2 years into their life of crime with Shadow and Izuku at age 6 and Dabi at age 11, they saw a girl the same age as the 2 younger members of the family being assaulted by an adult. Izuku, despite being a villain, was still a gentleman, a trait he passed on to the 2 ex-Todorokis, and promptly used his strings to cover the man with severe lacerations that would most likely result in his death. As the 3 brothers approached the young girl, she grew more and more afraid that they had malicious intentions. It wasn't until Izuku kneeled before her and checked her for injuries and asked if she was alright that she calmed down enough to speak to them. Who are you guys? And what did you do to him? She asked, still understandably shaken up by the whole ordeal. Izuku spoke in a soft voice that didn't convey any malice and said, I'm Izuku and these are my brothers Dabi and Shadow, whilst gesturing to the 2 standing behind him. Dabi then spoke up in response to her second question. Izuku just gave the prick what he deserved for treating you like he did. The girl blushed a little bit while thinking how amazing it was that such a nice-looking boy did that for her. However, it also scared her. But what exactly did you do? She asked again. This time Shadow answered that Izuku used his quirk, which prompted him to show the young girl his strings and explained that he could manipulate them and change their properties. However, Izuku had his own questions. If you don't mind me asking, what is your name, miss? This elicited another blush from the girl since she was not used to anyone her age being so polite to her. My name is Yaoyorozu. Momo Yaoyorozu. Izuku then gave her his signature grin, which made Momo feel all warm and fuzzy inside. It's a pleasure to meet you, Miss Yaoyorozu. We're the Midoriya brothers. Now then, let's get you home, the green-haired boy said as he helped her up. As the brothers and the young Yaoyorozu walked, they learned a lot about each other. The Midoriya family learned that Momo came from a wealthy family, and while she enjoyed the benefits of it, her creation Quirk allowed her to create whatever she wanted without needing the wealth. Being wealthy also alienated her from some of her classmates, so she usually felt alone. Momo, on the other hand, learned of their nature as villains, and while she was frightened at first once she heard their story, up until meeting her all she could feel was sympathy for the three Midoriya. Her sympathy remained even after she learned of their crimes and the fact that they have had to kill before. Learning of their past and present gave Momo the resolve to be their friend no matter what. Dabi and Shoto smiled at this, however Izuku had something to say about it once they made it to her house. "I'm flattered, Yaoyorozu, really I am. But you have to remember that we are villains and that our lives are dangerous. Think it over for the night before committing yourself to being our friend." The only thing that prevented Momo from brushing off her green-haired savior's request was how serious he looked. "I'll think it over for tonight if you agree to meet my parents. After all, I'm sure they'd be delighted to meet my saviors." And her saviors agreed, although Izuku would be the one to tell the story as he had become a practiced liar. Momo agreed to this and did not question anything he said for fear of bringing legal trouble their way. When the two older Yaoyorozu saw three boys standing behind their daughter, they immediately requested an explanation. And Izuku obliged, with the exception that the tall middle-aged man was a young teenager and the lethal lacerations were just using his strings to throw the boy into a wall. He also left out their own backstories from the mix. But Momo's parents were too overjoyed to care as they invited the boys into their home to stay for dinner. The parents asked questions about the boys, the answers of which were all lies. Momo sported a fierce blush after her mother asked which one of the brothers was her boyfriend. "Mom, I just met them. Besides kissing and all that stuff you and Dad do is so gross," Momo declared in response to her mother's teasing. "The fact that we just met aside, I'm 5 years older than these two and they're too young to be dating anyway." Which was followed by nodding from a stoic Shoto and a slightly blushing Izuku. After dinner and hanging out with Momo, the Midoriya brothers left and gave Momo the address of a restaurant to meet at should she decide to be their friend regardless of their criminal status. The next day came by and Momo did in fact choose to befriend the boys and even helped with their criminal endeavors over the years. A month after first meeting Momo, Shoto, while walking around by himself, saw some kids kicking a shirt and pants. He soon realized that it was a girl who had an invisibility quirk and immediately sprung into action. However, as he used his ice on one boy, he saw another turn into a marble in the hands of someone who looked to be about Dabi's age. This man was Atsuhiro Sako, and the young girl's name was Toru Hagakure. After talking with the two kids, Toru and Atsuhiro learned of his reputation as well as his brothers. What shocked him, however, was how willing they were to join up with the Midoriya brothers. By the time Shoto, Izuku, Momo, and Toru were 10 and Dabi and Atsuhiro were 15 and 16 respectively, they had all killed someone. The Midoriyas had been killers even before meeting their new friends. Toru, now named Phantom, got her first kill during a robbery due to a jewelry store guard being able to see her with his quirk. Atsuhiro, now named Mr. Compress, killed the leader of a gang trying to intimidate the Midoriya. Momo, now named the Creator, had her first kill, which was the most shocking of them all as hers was the bloodiest since she mutilated someone with a gun hand quirk aiming for Izuku. After Izuku calmed her down and reassured her that everything was okay, she revealed that she would do it again in a second. It was at that point that Momo joined Toru and Compress as full-fledged members of the Midoriya family. 2 years later, Dabi found one Himiko Toga after her first murder and recruited her as an associate of the Midoriya family. He used her to help him be a scare tactic to get the more brazen gangs under the iron boot that was Izuku Joker Midoriya. 1 year after that, Himiko became a family member just like Toru, Momo, and Compress before her. It was during her introduction to the other family members that she tried to flirt with Izuku as an attempt to get a rise out of Dabi. Dabi was mildly annoyed since he had grown attracted to the little psychopath and knew what she was doing. Momo, on the other hand, was furious and claimed Izuku as her own by kissing him in front of everyone. She and Izuku both blushed furiously before glaring at Compress handing Dabi some money. Under Izuku's orders, Compress explained that he and Dabi made a bet on who would make the first move and that he just lost. Himiko then kissed Dabi much longer than Momo kissed and Izuku. When asked for an explanation by Momo, who was still upset at Toga for flirting with her now boyfriend, Dabi was the one who responded. "She wanted to get a rise out of me," he said simply, to which Himiko said guilty as charged. Fast forward to the present day, and the Midoriya family had become a powerhouse in the criminal underworld. The core members, now called executives, had developed their skills quite well over the years. Shoto and Dabi both became capable of easily overpowering Endeavor with their flames. Shoto could cause his ice to dwarf tall buildings with little effort. Compress, who was already a skilled acrobat, became an expert at the sport. Toru's stealth and assassination skills became unmatched. Momo easily became the smartest member of the family excluding Izuku and could create anything the family could ever need. Izuku made the most improvement ability-wise, however. He had completely mastered his ability and developed several techniques. He learned that he could fire his strings like bullets, attach them to people's nervous systems to control their body. By manipulating them in a way that caused a lot of friction, he could creating a burning whip from his palm. He even learned that somehow he could connect his strings to the clouds themselves and use them to fly. However, his most powerful ability was his awakening. Through awakening his devil fruit, he was capable of transforming his very surroundings into strings that he could manipulate. The correct terminology was determined after Momo found a very obscure book explaining devil fruits about a year prior to the present day. Quirks aside, each executive became masters of hand-to-hand combat capable of taking on multiple people at once. Pro heroes included, with Izuku specifically bringing his strength to an inexplicably superhuman level. Today, however, the Midorya family was on their way to a meeting with a group called the League of Villains. Or rather, the Midorya brothers were, as Compress and Himiko were at the warehouse that was their core base, whilst Momo and Toru were currently at UA in the hero course. Why were they there, you ask? Simple, they're spies. In fact, said spies had just passed on information that was related to the brothers' meeting. Joker, Freezer Burn, and Dabi were on their way to meet the League of Villains' own Tamura Shigaraki. Once making it to the bar that was the League's base, Izuku entered with his signature smile adorning his features while Shadow was stoic, and Dabi was disinterested. Joker, I'm glad you made it. Are you interested in my offer? The hand-faced villain asked. As the three stepped into the light, their appearance was more noticeable. Dabi had dyed his hair black and wore a black long coat with his sleeves rolled up past his elbows, simple black pants that he had cuffed at the ankles, and black shoes. Shadow wore a custom-made jacket courtesy of Momo that was half white and half red corresponding to his hair, a black tank top underneath with black pants and white shoes. Izuku wore black pants with green stripes, black shoes, a dark green dress shirt with the top button undone, and a black feathery coat that he wore like a cape. Whether or not I'm interested would depend on your plan, Shigaraki, said the green-haired kingpin with his smile never wavering. Shigaraki, while reluctant to tell the crime lord of his plan, did so anyway out of respect for his reputation and due to orders from his sensei. Well, thanks to inside information, we know that Class 1 is going to be at the USJ in a few short days, and that All Might will be there. Get on with it, face palm, said an impatient Dabi. Shigaraki scowled under his hand before continuing. We've amassed a large amount of villains and have our very own Namu. A large black-skinned being with an exposed brain and a beak-like mouth came out from the shadows at its mention. With multiple quirks in the form of shock absorption, super regeneration, super strength, and super speed, it was designed to kill All Might. Izuku's expression did not change, however. Interesting indeed. Sure, I'll go along with your little plan. After all, there isn't really a downside for me. Shigaraki beamed at this information. Excellent, he said. How many people will you be sending in with us? Izuku pretended to think before actually responding. Just Freezer Burn and I will suffice. This shocked Shigaraki, as he expected more than just 2 people. However, he followed his sensei's advice and went with what they said. Very well, be here in 2 days and then we'll infiltrate the USJ. Izuku nodded before he and his executives took their leave. Are you sure you and Shadow are both necessary? Dabi asked, as he was curious as to why the boss and an executive were going. Relax, Dabi, we aren't going out of necessity. We're going because, unlike you, we won't be able to see our girlfriends regularly, Izuku said with a fake glare. Indeed, with Toru and Momo both infiltrating UA, you'll be the only one who can keep up a relationship that isn't long distance. Shadow agreed, emulating his boss's fake glare. In an attempt to take the false heat off of him, Dabi brought up another point. Do we know who the League's informant is? As a matter of fact, we do. Toru discovered that the person who gave the League their information is one Denki Kaminari. Shadow reported, as it was his girlfriend who obtained the information. And the best part is that due to Toru's invisibility, the little lightning bolt doesn't know who our informant is, Izuku said with glee. Besides, that little Bakugo is in one, so I plan to pay him a visit too, he said with a malicious smirk shared by Dabi and Shadow. Momo was the first person to walk into class, followed by a boy with dark hair and glasses. She decided to come to class early as she assumed it would be expected of someone who got into UA through recommendation. Hagakure followed in a few minutes after, followed by a few more students. After a couple more minutes, one student walked in and it filled their hearts with unbridled rage. The student was Katsuki Bakugo. Toru was pissed at the piece of shit that dared to bully her beloved boss who made her feel important, like family. Momo, however, was beyond enraged. It took all of her willpower and some of Toru's to keep her from brutally murdering the boy who bullied her boss, savior, and boyfriend right where he stood. The explosive boy was saved by the timely arrival of Shota Aizawa, better known as the Pro Hero Eraserhead, after he criticized them for taking too long to get focused. He handed each student a gym uniform so they could get changed. In the girls' locker room, Toru and Momo decided to take a little longer than the rest of the girls to get ready so they could discuss the cockroach that was in their class. The fact that he even made it here is ridiculous. If it weren't for that droopy-eyed caterpillar, I would have ripped him to pieces right then and there. Momo said with unrivaled venom in her voice. I know Momo, his existence pisses me off too. But think about it, would you rather one of us deal with him, or would you rather have Joker be the one to do him in? Toru said in an attempt to placate her crime-given sister. And it worked. Maybe a little too well, because Momo started laughing like a madwoman the moment she thought of what her beloved would do to his former bully. Now don't get her wrong, she isn't a yander by any extent. She's just appreciative of Izuku like Toru is, but for different reasons. Toru is appreciative because Izuku showed her what a real family could be like. The love and care he shared for all of his executives was so foreign to her when she first became a member of the family, and as a result she considers the Midoriya family to be her real family, while her blood relatives are just a convenient mask. Momo, on the other hand, appreciates Izuku not just due to the love that they share, but due to the fact that he didn't treat her differently because she was wealthy. Hell, he even turned down her offers of financial support by always saying the family will gain money through its own methods, otherwise it's meaningless. And while some may feel insulted, Momo felt proud to be part of the Midoriya family because it meant she was kept around not because of her status, but because they actually wanted her there. So when they discovered who Katsuki was, it took Shadow, Dabi, and Compress to hold them back from hunting him down. It was only when Izuku returned from a meeting with a rival gang that they were able to calm down. The reason for this was simple: he planned to break him down piece by piece. When he spoke his plans out loud, all the executives were put at ease. The reason for this is simple. All of the executives, Izuku included, had sit lives before the family existed. Izuku was bullied, Dabi and Shadow were abused, Momo was neglected, Toru was treated like a slave, and Compress was put under unattainable expectations that usually resulted in a physical or verbal beating. However, the existence of the family changed all of that because Izuku showed them what family should be, and each and every executive shared this experience with every person who worked under them. The Midoriya family was more than a criminal organization. It was an honest-to-God family, as the name implies, and that is what inspires the loyalty each member has for their boss. After deciding they had taken enough time, they went outside, and Aizawa explained the Quirk-enhanced fitness tests they would be doing. He had Katsuki demonstrate the ball throw, and with that the tests began. After completing all the exams, the students ranked as follows: 1. Momo Yaoyorozu. 2. Itsuka Kendo. 3. Katsuki Bakugo. 4. Tenya Ida. 5. Fumikage Takoyami. 6. Mizo Shoji. 7. Mashiro Ajiro. 8. Ajiro Kirishima. 9. Satsuna Takage. 10. Toru Hagakure. 11. Mina Ashido. 12. Achako Uraraka. 13. Koji Koda. 14. Rikido Sato. 15. Suiwa Sui. 16. Yuga Aoyama. 17. Hanta Siro. 18. Denki Kaminari. 19. Kyoyuka Jiro. 20. Minoru Mainta. Mainta started crying as he saw his rank before Aizawa admitted to it being a logical ruse in order to get people to try their hardest. Mainta's tears of sorrow became tears of relief while everyone was shell-shocked. Well, almost everyone, since Momo and Toru shared the same thought. Really, they thought he was serious. After this, classes proceeded as normal until lunch, where Momo ate with Itsuka, Kyoka, and Satsuna while Toru sat with Mina, Mashiro, Denki, and Tsuyu. They each interacted with their fake personalities, Momo being an intelligent but slightly naive rich girl whose innocence must be protected at all costs, and Toru being a bubbly airheaded gossip hound. The day passed by uneventfully until the next day, where it was time to choose class representatives. Surprisingly, Momo was chosen as the class rep and Itsuka was the vice rep. At lunch, the press somehow managed to break in, which caused a panic that Itsuka and Momo both proceeded to calm down. While this occurred, however, one Denki Kaminari found and reported the USJ staff schedule to the League of Villains, not knowing that Toru was right there with him. After school, Toru reported her findings to Momo, who reported them to Izuku. The next 2 days passed uneventfully until the day of the USJ trip came. As all of the students got on the bus, all of the villains, Izuku and Shadow included, began to meet up at a certain bar. The plan was about to be set in motion. Momo POV. As we got on the bus, I couldn't help but wonder what exactly Izuku had planned for the USJ. I would talk to Toru about it, but we agreed that it would be best to stick with our respective groups. So instead of discussing possible actions our family might take using the USJ information, I have to listen to a bunch of naive teenagers praise me about a false representation of my academic and athletic abilities. Toru at least gets to gossip and have fun. Despite my irritation, I put on a false smile and react humbly with things like, "Oh no, I'm no better than anyone else," or "Everyone did their best." And that's what matters, even though the first statement is a complete lie and the second doesn't matter if your best can't save you. Geez, being a criminal has made me such a cynic, although maybe that's because all of my positivity is geared towards the family. There is one student aside from Bakugo that has earned my ire, however. That grape-headed little perv Mainta. If I weren't in the hero course, I would have gutted him the second he looked at me with those perverted little eyes. At least Bakugo can maintain eye contact. That's not to say that I like Bakugo more than Mainta, oh no. There is no human being in this world that I hate more than Bakugo. Arrogant prick. Izuku is better than him in every capacity and doesn't lord any of it over any of us. If anything, it's a struggle and a half to get him to accept any kind of praise. My thoughts were disturbed, however, by someone lightly shaking me. It was Itsuka Kendo. Hey, yeah, Momo, you alright? You kinda spaced out and had a weird look on your face for a second. The orange-haired girl said. Yeah, you kinda looked a little love-struck if I'm being honest. Takage chimed in. Come on guys, her love life doesn't really matter, it's her business after all, said the ever-loyal Gyro. Her response didn't surprise me, honestly. It doesn't take a genius to figure out that she had a crush on me, although I am certainly surprised that she likes me for me rather than my body. Toru has confirmed that she looks at me longingly rather than just checking me out like a certain grape. Good intentions aside, however, this just caused more problems as the gossip hound that was Mina Ashido and the perverts Minta, Kaminari, and Siro immediately rushed over to get the scoop on my love life. Yeah, Momo's love life, come, I gotta get in on this. Where are the details, girl? Said a pink-skinned annoyance. New Yaoyorozu can't be taken, how can I tap that now? I'll kill you, grape-headed midget. Face it, dude, she's always kinda been out of our league. Kind of out of your league is an understatement, traitor boy. I don't think being in a certain league is the problem, Jammingway. The problem is that you're all perverts, the punk girl said in response. This elicited tears from all the perverts involved. My questions haven't been answered. I need answers. Who is it? Are you already dating? Is it just a crush you need to confess? Is it a boy? Is it a girl? Come on, girl, I need to know. The only thing you need to know is that I'm getting very irritated right now, Pinky. Geez, Ashido, have you ever heard of a right to privacy? You have no right demanding this stuff from Yao. I appreciate your assistance, Gyro, but it's fine. Some people just lack the respect to know what privacy is. Mina and the perverts cringed at this. Serves them right. If you must know, I do in fact have a boyfriend. He does not go to UA, and we have been dating for 2 years with many more hopefully on the way. I had to keep from laughing out in triumph. The perverts looked dejected. Mina looked guilty. Gyro looked like she expected such a thing. Perhaps some thanks are in order. I really do appreciate your assistance, Gyro. They were quite overwhelming, I said with a smile that looked like it blinded her. It's no problem, yeah, Momo, what are friends for, right? She said while rubbing the back of her neck. I'm surprised Hagakure wasn't trying to get in on it though. Perhaps Hagakure is capable of understanding privacy. Maybe. And with that, the perverts know that I am off the market. Granted, they don't know how much hell my lovely Izuku will rain down upon them if they so much as try and hold my hand without my consent. Once that was over, the rest of the bus ride was fairly uneventful, and we made it to the USJ without incident. Once we got there, we were greeted by number 13, who was suspiciously without all might. When one student asked, she said that he was busy and couldn't make it. Oh boy, the league isn't gonna like that, Toru whispered into my ear, and I nodded in agreement. Izuku informed us of their plan to invade the USJ and kill All Might. They are likely to be upset that they'll be missing their shot. We followed number 13 as she explained rescues and the USJ's role as a rescue training site. However, we stopped when a portal of black mist opened and several villains came out. Hey, is this supposed to be part of the exercise? Anjiro asked worriedly. No, those are villains, Aizawa said ominously. 13, protect the students. Aizawa then proceeded to launch himself at the villains. I must say his combat technique is quite good. Any of us executives could do better, but his skill is still nothing to scoff at. After all the rank-and-file villains came out, the big fish decided to step out. A man dressed in black and covered with hands. Tamura Shigaraki, a large black humanoid that matched the description of the Naomu. Shadow came out next, followed by the Warp Gate user, and finally Izuku. As soon as Izuku left the Warp Gate, most of us were teleported to different zones. I was in the same zone as Gyro and Kaminari. There are worse people to be stuck with, I suppose. We were rushed by the villains surrounding us and the fight began. Izuku POV. As I stepped out of Kurogiri's Warp Gate, I immediately locked eyes with Momo. I must say, quite the revealing hero costume if you ask me. Eraserhead was already swatting away the hordes of villains that Shigaraki brought. Not gonna lie, it doesn't really surprise me. Over the 2 days we spent preparing, I learned that he was an amateurish man-child. He had no backup plan. He threw fits whenever things didn't go his way. And his army of villains were all trash. Yeah, there was no way the family was going to ally with the League. The next person I was excited to see was good old Bakugo. He still looks as temperamental as ever. I can deal with him later though. As Kurogiri warped everyone away, I saw Momo and Kaminari go through the same portal. Well, better start looking, I guess. As I turned, I saw Shadow leaving to search for Toru as well. Needless to say, he'd have the more difficult search. Oh well, I think to myself as I use my Skyroad now, if I was a Warp Gate user, where would I send a lightning user? It was then that I saw a large flash of lightning over by a rocky area. Huh, that was easy. Once I made it over there, I saw Momo, Kaminari, and a purple-haired girl with aux cords for earlobes. Well, I need them out of the picture if I want some alone time, I thought before covering them in cuts courtesy of my strings. Not enough to kill them, but enough to ensure my privacy. As they fell to the ground, Momo looked up, saw me, and immediately smiled. God, I really have it bad for this girl. I glided down to her and was immediately greeted with a passionate kiss. I missed you too, I said with my signature smile before getting multiple pecks. Less talking, more kissing, she commanded, and I happily obliged. And a time 2 years ago or more I would have been a blushing mess. Now not so much. Once we finished, she told me about her time at UA so far. And I was laughing my ass off. Holy shit, I can't wait to see the looks on their faces when they realized that their class rep was a villain all along, haha. Momo, God bless her soul, shared my amusement and laughed with me. Then came the unpleasant part. You know you have to do to me what you did to them, she said with a soft smile. I was almost always smiling nowadays. A smile has adorned my face 90% of the time for the past 4 years. But when she said that, I scowled. I'm not happy about that. I know you aren't, but I do need to maintain my cover. You know I don't like that I have to do this. I know you don't. I love you, Izuku. I love you too, Momo, I said with a sigh as my strings coiled around her and gave her the same amount of cuts as her classmate. I caught as she fell and placed a kiss on her forehead before I flew towards the sounds of All Might and Namu clashing. Shadow POV. After Izuku left, I immediately began my search for Toru. I found her by herself, surrounded by a small amount of villains sprawled all over the floor. They likely split from the pack. When she noticed I was there, she ran up and gave me a kiss that I immediately reciprocated. I missed you, Halfsy, she said softly as we held one another. I missed you too, Toru. I felt her smile into my neck. She told me everything that happened at UA. The Quirk apprehension test, which she was upset she couldn't go all out on, the press breaking in when she uncovered the league's insider, how she and Momo were able to get along great with the other students. You know you're gonna be found out at some point, right? Well, yeah, but that doesn't mean I can't have some fun with it. A fair point. Just don't get too used to the student lifestyle. I know. You worry too much, Halfsy. I don't see a problem with that. Besides, I always worry about you. I know you do. I love you, Shadow. I love you too. I should get back now. Stay safe. I'm not the one you should be saying that to. After all, it's her classmates that should be worried. Especially Bakugo, I thought to myself as I made my way back to the main area where I could hear what I could only assume was a power clash between Namu and All Might. Bakugo POV. Damn that effing warp gate user. At least I was surrounded by small fry I could blow to pieces. Hey city hair, let's see who can stomp the most small fry, I said, since I figured why not make the most of this city day. I'm always down for a competition, Bakugo. One like this is especially manly, he said as he hardened himself and started beating the ever-living F out of as many villains as possible. It didn't really matter, it was obvious I was gonna win. I don't know how long it took, but eventually the small fry were on the ground after a world of hurt. Surprisingly, City Hair only lost by 5 villains. I honestly expected him to do worse. As we made our way back to our class of extras, I had a lot to think about. Classes escaped, so he should bring back some pros to round up all these punks. That isn't an issue. What was an issue was that the last villain to step out looked suspiciously like that city Deku. Which is weird because that damn nerd was declared dead 3 years ago. After he ran away 10 years ago, it was like he fell off the map. No evidence, no DNA, nothing. Yet today a villain that looked remarkably similar to Deku appeared. No way. Even if that effing nerd was alive, his hero worship wouldn't let him be a villain. On our way back, we met up with Man Hands and the Lizard Beach. We got back just in time to watch Mr. Aizawa get his ass handed to him by that big black effer. I used one of my gauntlets to blast the effer off of him while Lizard Beach and Frog Beach hauled him off to safety. At the same time, City Hair and Man Hands pinned the Warp Gate user, meaning it was just me and that piece of sick covered in hands. Until the big black effer got back up and shrugged off my attack like nothing. I took exception to this. How in the actual F are you still alive? That isn't a very heroic thing to say, Bakubro. Shut the F up, City Hair. If this thing died, I think people would make an exception. If a pro killed it, then yay, but not so much for a student. Shut the F up, Man Hands. F, these people are pissing me off. Then the hand effer went off on a monologue about how that black thing was designed to kill All Might. I'm not even gonna lie. That shit scared me. Just as it was about to charge me, the big man himself came in and intercepted it. With the big guys out of the way, I rushed the hand bastard. I got you now, you piece of shit. Or so I thought, because right as I was about to blow him into the next life, I stopped moving. And it wasn't consciously. No matter how hard I tried, I could not move. Then I heard a laugh that shook me to my core. Whoops, did I do that? I heard someone say mockingly. I was allowed to turn my head, and what I saw made my blood run cold. Deku. There he was, sitting with a smile that made my, already chilled, blood freeze. Hey, Bakugo. I flinched more than I would like to admit when he didn't call me that stupid childhood nickname of his. How's it hanging? You seem a little tied up at the moment, but that's no reason why we can't catch up. Bakubro, you know this guy. Oh yeah, we know each other real good. Used to be best friends. Then the prick got his quirk. Bakugo, what is he talking about? I could tell Man Hands was getting worried as to where this was going. Pride be damned, I wasn't gonna let Deku be the one to say what I did. I bullied him. Both of their eyes widened with shock. They were even more shocked by what he said next. From the day he got his quirk to the day my mom died. He said as I felt whatever was holding me grip even tighter. How are you even holding me, Deku? You're quirkless. If I can get him to lose focus for just one effing second, I can. Or so you'd think. This little ability of mine awakened when I tried to save my mom. Drawback is I can't swim, but hey, it's a small price to pay. Why are you helping these effers, Deku? Weren't you the one going on and on about helping people like a hero? You're right, I did always drone on and on about heroes. Until I realized that pieces of humans that like you were capable of being heroes despite your attitude. He said with that sickening smile never leaving his goddamned face. So I decided to be a villain. You piece of shit. Do you think Aunt and Co would want this? Do you? I love my mother, Bakugo, really I do. But what she wants doesn't factor into it anymore. Actually, what you want doesn't matter either. So let's see if you can be a hero with that quirk of yours cut in half, shall we? And like that, my right arm fell to the ground, severed at the elbow. The last thing I saw was man hands and city hair rush towards me before they were cut off by a wave of fire. At that point, everything went black. General POV. Izuku let go of Bakugo after he severed his arm. Shouto kept Kirishima and Kendo from reaching him. However, Shigaraki's supposed anti-All Might weapon was just blasted into the stratosphere. Needless to say, the man-child was pissed. Just as he and All Might were about to rush each other, they found themselves unable to move. What the F is this? The man-child cried out. I can't move. All Might commented. Congratulations, you have basic observation skills, Izuku said with his smile never wavering. I told you that you should have had a backup plan, Shigaraki. I chuckled at the glare he gave me. Well, this colossal F-up at least served one purpose. And what purpose was that, villain? Crippling a student. All Might said clearly enraged. Nah, that was more of a personal goal. This poorly thought out assault showed me that joining the League of Villains would be detrimental to my organization. Kurogiri, if you would be so kind as to get us out of here before I make your boss's head look like Bakugo's arm. Kurogiri didn't need any further prompting as he was well aware of the Joker's reputation. In that instant, the villains were gone. All Might patched up Bakugo the best he could and the heroes returned to UA to lick their wounds. All students injured in the conflict had their injuries tended to and were in the infirmary. Izuku and Shouto left without a word upon returning to the bar. Shigaraki threw a fit the second they were out the door. Toru gave Momo a get-well letter from Izuku when she woke up. And the everyday life of heroes, villains, and spies continued. Izuku really was living up to the name Joker at the moment. Why, you ask? Because he was laughing his ass off right now. There are two reasons for this. The first reason is his chair. Well, it isn't really a chair, it's more of a pile of bodies. You see, with the help of a hacker under his command named Calculator, Izuku was able to find every student that actively bullied him as well as the teachers who let it happen. Using Calculator's impressive skills, he was able to completely ruin the teachers' lives. He got them fired for the things they did, created fake evidence of adultery to get their spouses to leave them if the bullying wasn't enough or if actual adultery hadn't already occurred. He got their kids to hate them, and made it so they were unable to get another job. So when they disappeared courtesy of Absalom, an invisibility quirk user who specialized in abductions, no one was really surprised. For the kids, they were also abducted by Absalom and had fake suicide notes left at their houses, and their DNA was left at areas where it was believable that their bodies would never be found. When all of these offenders were brought before Izuku, he had a field day. Every single one apologized to Izuku and begged for mercy and forgiveness. Spoiler alert, he ran out of both. They were subjected to many different types of torture, all made possible by his devil fruit. He used overheat to repeatedly burn them. He used the pentachromatic strings to whip them and cut them. He used parasite to make some of them fight to the death. He made others fight to the death willingly at the promise that he would let the winner go free, only to kill them right after. He used his strings to simulate the rack and tortured people that way. He created nooses to hang them almost to the point of unconsciousness before letting them breathe and doing it all over again. He made the strings dig under their skin to trigger their pain receptors. He ripped out their fingernails, toenails, and teeth. He showed no mercy. One by one they died under the strain of the torture they were put under until they became the pile they are now. The second reason is due to his beloved Momo. She created contact lenses that acted as recording devices so she could send a special video to Izuku, and it was the one he was watching now. Izuku expected his classmates to tear Bakugo a new one. That didn't change how amused he was. The comments were as such. Tenya Ada, a boy you bullied, became a villain that covered 3 of our classmates in severe injuries. What do you have to say for yourself? Itsuka Kendo, how the hell do you expect to be a hero if you act like that? And you still act like an entitled brat who can push around whoever he wants. Ijiro Kirishima, yay, what the actual F man. I thought you just had a temper, but you're just a bully. Kyoka Gyro, if you had actually been a decent effing human being, then maybe Kaminari, yeah, Momo. And I wouldn't have been cut to hell and you would still have 2 arms. Denki Kaminari. What the hell was even your problem? You even bullied the kid when his mom died if he's to be believed. That's all kinds of effed up. Minor reminder, I might be a pervert, but I at least know when to shut up and stop. When a dude's mom dies is definitely one of those times. Mizo Shaoji, you should be ashamed of yourself. Fumikage Takoyami, you are covered by the darkness of your sins, yet you do not seem to care. Do you truly want to be a hero? Suyu Asui, with a best friend like you, no wonder he became a villain. Ribbit. Mashurawa Jiro, I never liked you to begin with. To find out that you bullied a kid who worshipped heroes to the point that he became a villain makes me despise you. Satsuna Takage, I gotta repeat what it is said on the first day. Are you sure you're in the right place? It's beginning to seem like you don't belong here. Rikido Sato, and all because he was quirkless? What's even wrong with that? If anything, the people who continue to push on despite being quirkless deserve praise way more than an entitled bully like you. Yuga Aoyama, while he certainly has style and flair, the transition your ugly actions forced upon him is certainly not beautiful. Koji Koda. He just shook his head in disappointment and glared at Bakugo. Hantasiro, you know I was willing to look past your attitude, but man, I don't think I can really do that now. You're definitely an unlikable prick. Achako Uraraka, how can you even think to call yourself a hero? Let alone call us extras, and you have the audacity to say that you're going to be number one. It'll never happen. Mina Ashido, you have effing issues, dude. You should sort those out before even thinking of becoming a hero. The funniest part to him, though, was Bakugo's own declaration. The response he got from Momo and Toru was just icing on the cake. Katsuki Bakugo, I effing know all of that. I know I effed up. I know I'm the reason those three got cut up and I lost my arm. I effing know all of it. That's why I'm gonna save him. I'm gonna bring him back to the way he was. Toru Hagakure, what makes you think you can save him? What makes you think he even wants to be saved? If he honestly wanted to be a hero, do you think he would have been able to do what he did to you, Jiro, Kaminari, and Momo, all with that damned smile on his face? Katsuki Bakugo, so what? You're just telling me to give up. So what if I can't be number one with my attitude? I don't care about any of that. I just want to save one effing kid. Momo Yaoyorozu, and what makes you think he'll even listen to you? He clearly hates you. He was willing to team up with villains he called amateurs for the sole purpose of getting to you. And when he did, he effectively cut your fighting strength in half by taking off your arm. Look at what he did to Jiro, Kaminari, and I, all with a smile. Do you truly believe these are the actions of someone who deep down still wants to be a hero? Katsuki Bakugo, he's just in an effed up place right now. I can bring him back. Shota Aizawa, be realistic. The only thing you can do is bring him in. Do any of you even know who this kid is? Katsuki Bakugo, of course I do. He's Izuku Midorya. Shota Aizawa, he's a feared and well-known villain. No one outside of his organization knew his name until now. Everyone else always called him Joker. He's the head of his own crime family as well as an underworld powerhouse. Underground heroes like myself have been after him for several years. This shows how smart he was even as a child. He would have made a great hero, but now he's one of the most terrifying villains out there. Tenya Ada, sir, you say he's well known, but none of us have heard of him. Ijiro Kirishima, yeah, I've never heard of any Joker. Itsuka Kendo, he's never been on the news or anything. Shota Aizawa, that's because he's never been caught. As I said, he's the head of a crime family. That means he has underlings. I suppose it's more accurate to say he's well known amongst underground heroes like myself. Everyone who has spoken to Joker has always said the same thing. He's composed and respectful unless someone speaks badly about his executives. Suyu Asui, executives ribbit. Shota Aizawa, like the kid with the half and half hair. They're the leaders that only answer to him. An info broker from Shinjuku told me that the executives are like family to him. And with that, the video was over and Izuku was still laughing. Momo, Toru, and Eraserhead had the right idea though. There was no way in hell that he was becoming a hero. Not now, and most likely not ever. He wasn't completely evil though. He has helped heroes from time to time if it fit his own agenda. If another villain was causing him problems, he'd either cut the problem out or lead the heroes right to the problem and have them deal with it. If someone was trying to push in on his territory, he'd leave anonymous tips to have the heroes deal with it. Once he showed the video to Dabi, Shadow, Compress, and Toga, they all laughed with him, until it got to the point where Aizawa spilled the beans on what he knew. Joker, should we do something about Eraserhead? Ooh, can I play with him? Babe, as much as I love your eccentricities, Eraserhead isn't to be taken lightly. Actually, Dabi, Eraserhead's combat skill is below our own. It would be more challenging than usual, but it's still doable, Shadow said, which eased his brother's worries. Honestly, I'm not even mad. I figured some heroes would know of us by now. Eraserhead just confirmed it. Now that we know for sure, we can make certain that no slip-ups are made. Couldn't he use his knowledge to find out our identities? That would put Momo and Toru in danger. Compress, that would be a good point if our reputation didn't precede us. Everyone knows what'll happen if they rat us out. Every boss that knows who we are is the boss because we killed the previous one for crossing us. All the info brokers have been paid off, and even if they weren't, they all value their lives. As expected of our Joker, he always thinks of everything. Toga cheered. On to other subjects. When are you gonna find that special someone in your life, Compress? Asked a very curious Dabi. After all, if he could get a girl, Compress was more than capable. I am not currently looking at the moment. The only way it would ever work was if they were to become or already be a member of the family after all. It was at that moment that Transporter, a villain under Compress dressed like a butler, teleported into the room. Joker, a broker, came and delivered the information you asked for. He said you would know what it is. Thank you very much, Transporter. You're free to go back to what you were doing unless Compress has something for you to do. I have nothing. I am pleased with your work, Transporter. But of course, boss, I'll be on my way. With that, he bowed and teleported away. What did you request, Izuku? Shadow asked. This, my dear brother, is information on Class 1B of UAS Hero Course. I intend to see if there is someone who can be persuaded to turn to our side. Izuku had quite the amount of information to look through. It would take a while to look through all of their backgrounds leading up to now after all. Momo POV. Outwardly I was glaring. Inwardly I was laughing my ass off. The class just finished tearing into Bakugo and I found it very satisfying. I had to admit, being with Izuku and the family had definitely taken a toll on my sanity. I wasn't yander crazy, but you can't kill people without batting an eye whilst maintaining your sanity. It just isn't possible. Once that was over, the class began listening to Aizawa discuss the sports festival. I, however, took exception to this. Griot at another practical event where we have to hold back. Fan-effing tastic. Then when I don't do well, I have to act all mopey and depressed when I don't do as well as someone who made it and through recommendations should. Ugh, how bothersome. Toru was probably having similar thoughts, albeit minus the ones related to recommendations, of course. Neither of us like holding back. We were given some time off in order to train. Toru and I would likely visit our boyfriends rather than train, if I'm being completely honest. We have our own training regimens we follow to keep us above several pro heroes that we do on our own time. Hey, yeah, Momo, I was wondering if maybe you wanted to train for the festival together. Gyro asked with a light blush. For FS sake, woman. I can't say no, I have an act to keep up after all. Oh, I'm honored you'd ask me for help. Of course we can, Gyro, I said, earning a bright smile from the punk girl. Well, there goes half of my time with Izuku. Bakugo POV. To say that I was pissed was an understatement. I was insanely pissed. The worst part was I couldn't do shit about it either. Ever since the cluster, that was the USJ incident, all anyone's been able to talk about is Joker this and Joker that. Now apparently someone let it slip that I bullied him and made him who he is, and now everyone is talking shit. I questioned who in class effing did it. Obviously everyone denied it. I wouldn't be surprised if that damn nerd spread the rumor himself, since he apparently became a effing CRIMELORD during the 10 years that he was gone. That Sid is seriously effed up. Not the extras talking Sid, I deserve that. But the fact that nerdy, hero-loving Deku is a effing crime lord. That pisses me off more than the Sid talking. At least I got a new arm out of everything. It uses tech to replicate my quirk and can even fire the sweat-holding grenades that I kept. It can also keep up with my howitzer impact in terms of raw power. Momo POV. It doesn't really need to be said that I was incredibly pleased with myself. Using our extensive network of hackers, it wasn't too hard to let slip that Bakugo made Izuku who he is today. I then got to watch Bakugo get a taste of his own medicine. Everyone from every class was talking shit on him, and why wouldn't they? He created a villain that stopped All Might and the leader of the League of Villains in their tracks with just a flick of his wrist. No student, not even Ida, had tried to stop it from happening either. The teachers tried, which is more than can be said for Izuku's teachers, but it didn't really help too much. When asked by students from the other courses if the rumors were true, we would always say yes. He did deserve it after all. I think it's needless to say everyone has found a target for the sports festival. Time skip after the sports festival. Momo POV. I could not be more pleased with how the sports festival went. Ida was asked to give a speech to the student body, a task he did wonderfully. Then the chaos began. The first game was an obstacle course. Normally Bakugo would be able to breeze through this since he could basically fly using his explosion. However, his prosthesis was considered a support item and therefore unusable as he wasn't in the support course. This knocked him from being potentially first place to being more towards the middle. Next was the cavalry battle. The person who placed first, Shiozaki Ibara, a devout Christian with a vine quirk, from Class 1B, had the 10 million point banner. But despite that, everyone still went after Bakugo. This resulted in him not making it to round 3. Round 3 was a tournament. Hitoshi Shinso from the general course beat Senkai Ibara from Class 1B with his mind control quirk. Next was Shiozaki Ibara versus Kaminari. Since Ibara was able to block Kaminari's indiscriminate shock, she pulled in the victory. Ashido was able to beat Aoyama. Kirishima beat 1B's Tetsu. Uraraka beat 1B's Honuki Juzo. I beat Takoyami using flash bombs. Ada, bless his soul. One after the support course's Hatsume turned him into a living billboard and forfeited. Zero beat 1B's Yosuaways. The next round had Shinso beating Zero, Ada beating Ibara, me beating Ashido, and Kirishima beating Uraraka, albeit barely. I gotta say the girl's tough. The third round pit Shinso against Ida, with Ida being the victor, while I won my battle against Kirishima. The final round had me against Ida, which I barely won whilst holding back. Ida unfortunately had to leave before the awards ceremony due to a family emergency. By using our family's network of info brokers, I discovered Ida's brother Ingenium was attacked and severely injured by the hero killer. As such, I offered to deliver the medal to him when he returned. The next day in class, we picked our hero names and learned that we would get internships. Uraraka went with Gunhead, Tsuyu went with Selkie, Kirishima went with Fourth Kind, Kendo went with Uobami, Hida went with Manual, Jiraiya went with Death Arms, Bakugo went with Best Genist, I went with Mount Lady, and Takoyami went with Hawks. The others really didn't matter too much since they were under third-rate heroes. Izuku POV. My oh my oh my. It seems the league has tried recruiting Stain. How do I know this, you ask? Well, when you have an information network as extensive as ours, you have a tendency to know whatever you want to know. The league's attempt to recruit Stain is the reason I am currently traveling around Hosu. I'd prefer if he stayed independent rather than teaming up with the Amateur Villains Club. He'd be way more efficient that way. I've spent quite some time traveling around Hosu. Upwards of a week, I want to say. My luck turned for the better, it seemed, as I heard screams. As I landed on the roof nearest to the screams, I saw Stain, Glasses McDorkface from 1A, and some third-rate hero that I didn't bother to recognize. I'll kill you, and in doing so I will avenge the name Ingenium. Ida shouted. My, I heard his brother was hit by Stain, but he's being quite irrational about this. It seems I was mistaken, boy. You are just another faker in this world of heroes. For that you must die. I couldn't suppress my whistle as I was quite impressed by Stain's conviction to cleansing the world of heroes. I mean, I knew he was a fanatic, but to kill a kid who hasn't even gotten through school yet takes a special kind of crazy. A kind of crazy I can respect. My whistle seemed to have gotten everyone's attention, however, since all heads turned towards me. What is all that? Ida said. Who's there? Stain seemed instantly on alert. I should probably calm him down. Oh, don't mind me, I'm just spectating at the moment. Stain, can you do me a solid and finish up so I can have a chat with you real quick? Who the hell are you? Another hero. This caused me to laugh like crazy. Who, me? A hero? No way, dude, not my thing. I am Joker. What are you doing here? What are your plans? Are you going to do to me what you did to Bakugo and take one of my limbs too? You know it's rude to interrupt people, Tenya Ida. You know my name. How? Oh, a little birdie told me. Even if they hadn't, placing second in the UA Sports Festival is quite impressive. A little birdie. Is Takoyami working under you? Maybe he is, maybe he isn't. Who really knows? Oh man, messing with people like this is so much fun. Destroying the bonds of trust between comrades is such a great pastime. Trickery, thy name is Izuku. Joker, you're that villain working for the league. For the first time in this entire encounter, I scowled. Then with a twitch of my finger, I cut his sword in half. Stain's eyes widened with shock. The next time you so much as think of associating me with those amateurs, I'll cut you in two instead of your weapons. Do I make myself clear? Stain could only nod. And with that my smile returned. Good, now that we're clear. I was then interrupted by an attacking Namu, which everyone promptly dodged as Stain's quirk wore off. For FS sake, does no one have manners anymore? 3 more flying Namu proceeded to appear. That would seem to be the case. As reluctant as I am, we'll have to work together to beat them, said Ida. Right. So here's how we'll split it up. Stain, Glasses, third-rate, you guys will take the first one. Me, I'll take the other 3. We good. Let's go. I then proceeded to take to the sky before anyone could interrupt or challenge my plan. Stain POV. Does the arrogant fool really believe he can handle 3 of these monsters? Heh, what nonsense. Even with the kid and the faker helping me, we had to resort to dodging and counter-attacking as a strategy. The thing had instant regeneration too, so we were in for a long fight. Izuku POV. I get the distinct impression someone is underestimating me. Oh well, their loss, I suppose. I decided to end this quick by sending bullet strings through their heads, which worked fine until they regenerated. Instant regeneration, huh? This might be fun after all. I then proceeded to rush forth and crack one right in its exposed brain before kicking a second one so hard its ribs had to have punctured at least 1 lung. I dodged the third before kneeing it in the solar plexus. I realized after this exchange how boring it was when someone couldn't fight back, unless there was blood involved. Then it was always fun, so I started dismembering them. They recovered every time, but at least I had fun. Then I figured I should probably end it, and I cut all their brains into pieces so small it was impossible to regenerate. I love being able to do that with just a few twitches of my fingers. So satisfying. Now to see how the other chumps are doing. Stain POV. The stupid thing just wouldn't die. No matter how many times I cut it. No matter how hard the kid kicked it. Nothing we did worked. The kid and I were about to do a combo attack before its head got cut into little pieces. How'd that happen? Then the body fell and we saw Joker sitting on the roof, one leg crossed over the other with nigh invisible wires twirling around him and that damn smile planted on his face. At that moment I knew this kid was a monster. Edda POV. Unbelievable, he ended a very difficult and one-sided fight in less than a second. Not only that, he took out the other 3 too. Just how strong is this man? Izuku POV. Oh man, I tell you, the looks on their faces were so effing priceless. Unfortunately, the now drew the presence of heroes and law enforcement, so I had to make my chat with Stain quick. I'm gonna level with you, Stain. I have no issues with what you do. In fact, I applaud it. So do yourself a favor. Don't side with the League, they'll just hold you back. I see. Thanks for the advice, Joker, I'll take it. See you around. Not so fast, do you really think I'll just let you? Ida. You wouldn't want to lose your legs now, would you? Your brother will recover with enough physical therapy, but replacing your legs will be a whole different problem now, won't it? Make the smart choice, glasses. He reluctantly let Stain escape. With that done, I made my way back to our home base before the authorities arrived. Today was quite an eventful day. Now to see what tomorrow holds. The thought makes me giddy with excitement. Monoma POV. I can't believe it. Stealing the show at the sports festival wasn't enough. One also had to have an encounter with the hero killer. They just have to one-up us at everything. Can you believe those kids from 1A? Can you believe them, Shizaki? Actually, I am just happy God spared them from the pain of losing a classmate. My vine-headed classmate replied. Really? After that 4-eyed robot disrespected you during the sports festival? Or that half-and-half prick trashed his own classmates like nothing? How can any of you not be as pissed as I am? Wrath is not a sin that we future heroes should partake in, Monoma. In fact, is the one we should dabble in the least. Perhaps the word of God will sate your lust for vengeance against our fellow students. Ugh, she always makes things about religion. I can't blame her though. From what I've heard, religion is all that got her past her family's passing. That is literally the only reason that I tolerate it. However, my thoughts were interrupted by a voice that would change both of our lives forever. Izuku POV. My. If I recall, you were the one that ragged on my old bully the most during the festival's second round, weren't you, Blondie? I said as I dropped down from my sky road. I could tell they were shocked and scared, but that wasn't really my concern. It is not too late, Joker. If you hear the word of God, I am sure he will absolve you of your sins. The vine-headed girl said to me. Did they think I was here to kill them? I suppose I shouldn't be surprised considering what I did the last time I encountered multiple students. Oh well, are you two perhaps scared of me? Why would we be scared of you? If we're going to be heroes, we'll have to face people like you. The blonde one said. Dude, quick word of advice. If you're gonna bluff someone, make sure you believe the bluff first. Monoma is not bluffing. He would not be afraid of one such as you. The girl, I believe called Shizaki, said as Monoma looked shocked at her faith in him. Do I smell a possible romance coming on? Oh boy, this will be such fun. Regardless, I have no intention of harming either of you today, so you can relax. Monoma POV. My eyes widened in shock. When did Shizaki get such faith in me? Of course I bluffed. This guy took down 1A's top dog with no effort from what I heard. I was even more shocked to hear that he wasn't going to hurt us. What was he here for then? He will not harm us. What is your purpose then, O jester coated in sin? Jesus, Shizaki, really? O jester coated in sin, what if he takes offense to that? Izuku POV. O jester coated in sin, holy shit, I had to try so hard not to laugh my ass off at that. In the end I let out a little chuckle which caught their attention. Oh well, simple, I want you to join me. You see, Monoma, I happen to agree with your assessment on one, at least for the most part. I could give you both the power you need to one-up them. Why should we join you? We are aspiring heroes, not street thugs you can hire to do your bidding. We shall not stray from God's light. My, how devout she is. Perhaps it's time for a different trick. The thought caused my grin to widen. Flashback 6 years ago. Momo found a book that could be used to help strengthen the family's fighting ability. The book talked of a power derived from willpower called Haki. It seemed interesting, so we all gave it a shot. The book told of 3 types of Haki. They were observation, armament, and conqueror's Haki. Armament could be used similarly to a hardening quirk while also giving the user the ability to hit those who could become intangible. Observation gave users a 6th sense of sorts that supposedly allowed for the tracking of attacks that occurred at light speed. Conqueror's was different though. Everyone could use observation or armament, but only a small percent could use conqueror's Haki. It allowed the user to project their will even to the point of knocking out those who had a weaker will than the caster. Oddly enough, Compress had the greatest aptitude for Haki and gained the ability before the rest of us. His first use was observation Haki. Dabi and Shadow used armament before anyone else. After them I used Conqueror's Haki. While no one was knocked out, everyone felt it. It took 1 year for us to use Haki reliably. It took 2 more years for us to develop our proficiencies in it. Toru and Compress were more skilled at observation. Momo and Toga were better at armament. Dabi and Shadow were equally skilled in both. I excelled at Conquerors. 3 years after that we had mastered our haki. Flashback end. Shizaki's POV. What was this feeling? This air of superiority? I've never felt anything like it. It was more overpowering than the killing intent of that man. Is this what it feels like to be in the presence of God? It felt invigorating. It felt powerful, but it also felt kind and welcoming. What was this power he seemed to have? Monoma POV. What the hell was this? What was this presence, this sensation, this overwhelming power? Even in the face of this power I couldn't bring myself to be afraid of him. This aura he was releasing felt warm, like it meant us no harm. He promised power, and I believed him. Izuku POV. I only released a small portion of Conqueror's haki. I didn't want to abduct him after all. I wanted them to join me by choice. Judging by how Monoma dropped to his hands and knees while Shizaki dropped into prayer, I could tell I succeeded. You say you can give me the power to surpass those bastards from one if I join you. Count me in. If I can't be a hero with them around, then I'll be a villain instead and knock them off their high horse. I see it now. I apologize for my disrespect, O Great One. I devote myself to you and your cause. Please allow me to serve you as a loyal vassal should. Glad to hear it. Come on, we're gonna get started on catching you up. You are gonna need haki if you're gonna compete with us after all. This seemed to confuse the two, but I cut them off before they could ask any questions. I'll explain what haki is once we start your training, so hold off on any questions until then. Yay. They nodded and we were on our way. I hope Compress had as good of luck as I did. Compress POV at the same time as Izuku's recruitment. It seems Joker was right. They betrayed their own classmate at the drop of a known phrase. How disappointing. The reason for this line of thought was because Fumikage Takoyami was currently being chased by several police officers. Well, I suppose I should get to work. I dropped down from my perch on a telephone pole and compressed each police officer before jumping in front of Takoyami. Well, their boy, relax, I mean you no harm. I did deal with your would-be captors after all, I said as I showed him the beads in between my fingers. He looked behind him and sure enough they were gone just as I promised. You have my thanks, stranger from the darkness. May I ask your name? My friends call me Compress. Now why's a kid like you running from the cops anyway? I recognize you from the UA Sports Festival. My supposed comrades accused me of being a traitor working for the villain known as Joker. And apparently it's 'cause he has a bird head. The F kind of bullshit is that? Oh my, Joker told me that might happen. The boy went on guard at this. Perhaps I should reintroduce myself. I am Atsuhiro Sako, better known as Mr. Compress, and an executive to the Midoriya family. Before you run or attack me, allow me to explain your situation. You see, Tenya Ida picked his internship with the intention of exacting revenge on Stain. He was clearly shocked by that last piece of information. He did what? And he dares to accuse me of villainy. Yea, the F is that's it. Oh, believe me, I agree. I honestly expected more from the brother of a pro hero. Joker, however, seemed to think that this would happen and sent me to keep an eye on you. How did he know I would be accused of being a traitor? Well, it's quite silly, honestly. Or at least that was what I thought. You see, Joker wanted to advise Stain against joining the League of Villains, and in doing so prevented Tenya Ida's death. When Ida asked how my boss knew his name, Joker simply responded with the phrase, "Oh, a little birdie told me, and now here we are." Ida accused me over something like that. The boy was clearly shocked by this information. Not very heroic, is it? Well, since this was our fault, Joker has some offers for you if you're willing to listen. What are these offers? Well, you see, we know quite a few people in our line of work. We could get someone to permanently change your appearance and give you a new identity here in Japan. Or if you're against changing your appearance, we could teach you a new language and get you a new country to escape capture. Normally we would recruit you, but Joker feels that we have messed with your life enough. He seemed to think for a second before shocking me. Is recruitment an option? May I ask why? If a fool like Tenya can get away with making such baseless accusations when searching for vengeance, I think that I am entitled to some vengeance of my own. So are you gonna let us in, or what, magic man? Very well, Joker did not foresee this, but I think it will be a pleasant surprise for him. Follow me, we have much to teach you if you wish to keep up with the rest of us. The boy followed me like a man on a mission. It seems that instead of ridding UA of a traitor, it only ensured the creation of another. Time skip several hours. General POV, Monoma, Takoyami, and Shizaki were all in the process of learning haki. They were learning much faster as they had actual teachers, in the form of Compress and surprisingly Dabi, rather than being self-taught. Takoyami and Monoma found that they picked up armament fairly well, whilst Shizaki found observation to be easier. They were all shocked when they heard familiar voices come from the warehouse entrance. Izuku, we're back. Hey Joker, is Shadow around? I've missed him lots. This elicited shocks from all three haki students, as none of them expected two of 1A students to stroll in like it was no one's business. Gay Arazu, Hagakure, they're from 1A. What the hell is this? What are our schoolmates doing here? Momo and Tori were equally shocked to see Takoyami. They only expected to see Monoma and Shizaki. Thankfully, Izuku was there to explain. Hey Momo, I missed you as always. Hey Toro. Shouto's in the back cooking, I'm sure he'd accept a distraction from you. Nito, Ibara, Fumikage, meet Momo Yaoyorozu and Toru Hagakure, two of my executives and my infiltrators in UA. Momo, Toru, meet our newest recruits. But Izuku, I thought you said you were only recruiting Ibara and Nito, not Fumikage as well. Fumikage seemed to take exception to this. Do you have an issue with me being here, Yaoyorozu? No, not at all. I just figured that after we ruined your chances of being a hero, you wouldn't want anything to do with us. Shame on you for those thoughts, Yaoyorozu, said Ibara. She's right. It wasn't your guy's fault. Nito agreed. Indeed, it was that fool Ada's fault for taking words at face value rather than looking for a deeper meaning. Sorry, Momo, and I couldn't do better damage control, Takoyami. Joker really didn't intend for this to happen. I am aware, and I thank both of you for your support. Izuku smiled wider at this. His new members were already getting along with his family, and that always made him happy. The three recruits had compassion for one another, which already qualified them for executive, at least partially. They still had to get their empty hand and hacky skills up to snuff, but with actual teachers rather than having to teach themselves, it wouldn't take long. It seemed, however, that he would need to issue some orders, however, so he drifted down. Alright, first off, Momo, come here and give me a kiss. You've been standing there for like 5 minutes. After doing so, he continued despite the three newest members' shock. Takoyami, you're in the clear since you are wanted by the police. Nito and Ibara, you are both going to claim to be sick and not return to UA until the day of your exams so you all can get your skills up to snuff. Word has been going around that the league plans to attack the training camp you guys will be going on, so you'll need to be prepared. Manchild or not, Shigaraki and his villains are skilled and not to be underestimated. Toru, I want you and Compress to help Fumikage and Nito with observation hacking. Momo, I want you to help Ibara with armament, and you can switch off with Himiko when she gets back so you can complete your assignments for UA. Momo and Toru will also be helping you too with your assignments during your breaks so you can get them done faster. Any questions? Everyone seemed to understand and got to work. Next up was crashing Shigaraki's plan to crash the training camp. Momo POV. Classes had just ended for the day and I was about to head back to the warehouse so I could help Ibara with her armament hacky. But it seemed fate had other plans. I turned around as I heard Gyro calling my name. Gyro, did you need something? Oh, well, I was wondering if maybe you wanted to study together. Why, you know, for the E-exams and stuff. Oh my, this is quite the opportunity. I think I'll have a little fun with her today. Oh, why, of course, I'd be happy to, I said with a smile you'd give to someone who's more than just a friend. Her blush was intensifying by the second. After she gave a meek thank you, we decided to go to her house. Conveniently, her parents weren't home, so I was more than capable of taking advantage of the situation. When I gave her practice problems, I made sure that they were out of her range of understanding. The more problems she got wrong, the more her stress would build up. I let this go on up until she looked like she was about to explode. Are you doing okay, Gyro? You seem a little upset, I said as sweetly as possible. She responded by ranting about the difficulty of the problems and how we'll never need them and many other things. I let this go on for a while before cutting her off. Gyro POV. And why the actual F do we need to know how to find TH, I was saying before my rant was cut off by Momo's lips covering my own. I did the obvious thing and kissed her back despite knowing that she had a boyfriend. Once we broke apart, I decided to ask her about that. Yeah, Momo, why? I thought you had a boyfriend. He's never around. But you are Gyro, always supporting me and loving me. You're always there for me, she said in response. Kyoka, I said. What? I looked her in the eye and put my hand on her cheek and I whispered, call me Kyoka. She leaned closer. Only if you call me Momo, she whispered back. Our lips crashed back together. Momo POV, timeskip 30 minutes. Oh my, she wasn't bad. She wasn't as good as Izuku, but she was not bad at all. I looked at her sleeping form next to me. She certainly was cute. Maybe in a different life we could have had something serious. Not now though, not as long as Izuku was with me. I made a note apologizing that I had to leave since my parents called. Once I got back to the warehouse, I was immediately sniffed by Himiko. Hey Joker, Momo smells like SX. What the F, woman? Hey, how does she know? Oh Sid, I hope he isn't too mad. The very next second he was right in front of me, his signature grin wiped off of his face. Now why would that be the case? I led Kyoka Gyro to believe that I had an interest in her. This will damage her emotionally once we're pulled out from the training camp and make her less of a threat. Oh my god, I hope he accepts that. I see. I suppose since it's Gyro and you have no feelings for her, I can let it slide. I almost sighed in relief. However, my eyes widened with shock at his next statement. I can't let you go without some form of consequences though. So no physical intimacy for 3 weeks sounds good to me. No physical intimacy. No hugs, kisses, cuddles, or SX. For 3 weeks. God damn it. Gyro, you were so not worth it. So long as you don't bone her again, you can do whatever you need to in order to maintain your cover. I'm not that unfair. I suppose it could be worse. He could have broken up with me after all. The next day during lunch I apologized to Gyro for taking advantage of her and assured her that it wouldn't happen again. She however wanted to keep it going. Granted at a much slower pace than we started, but still, I already feel guilty because of my talk with Izuku yesterday. Now I'm going to feel guilty every time I'm with her. For someone Izuku calls the smartest executive, I'm really effing stupid. Timeskip exam day. Today was the day of the exams. Every day leading up until now was a combination of studying and making out with Gyro, while I really wanted to be with Izuku. Oh well, at least I got her to agree to lay off for the training camp using the excuse of wanting to make the most of our time there. Every day after studying with Gyro I would go back to the warehouse and do anything I could to make it up to Izuku. He claimed to have gotten over it since he realized how much I regretted my mistake. That wasn't enough for me, however. I would do literally everything short of physical intimacy, as that has been banned for 3 weeks. However, I couldn't focus on that right now. Right now I had to focus on how Kendo and I could beat Aizawa without me using haki or going all out. The solution was simpler than you would think. Flash bombs and tear gas did the trick and allowed us to make it through the exit and pass. Not everyone passed, however. Zero, Ashido, Kirishima, Kaminari, and Sato all failed the practical. Aizawa however revealed that they would still be going to the training camp with remedial lessons stacked on top of everything. Sucks for them, doesn't it? Timeskip day of the training camp. The days leading up to the training camp were for the most part uneventful. Aside from the part where Uraraka was held hostage by the Shigaraki. Supposedly he wanted to know why people focused on Izuku and Stain more than him. Her answer was that Stain had a clear ideology whereas Izuku had a more powerful presence. She wasn't wrong either, with Izuku being able to stop a clash between Shigaraki and All Might with no effort as well as taking out 3 Namas with the same lack of effort. He had more presence than Shigaraki could compete with. Now that we were actually getting onto the bus to leave for the training camp I was hoping to sit next to perhaps Kendo or Takage. But it seems that Gyro will be sitting next to me, probably so she can get in as much physical intimacy as possible before the training camp. Goddammit, my only consolation is that Compress is going to pull us out after thwarting the league. So after a long bus ride of non-consensual cuddles we stopped to stretch our legs as Aizawa put it. Turns out that meant traveling through a forest of earthen monsters created by one of the pussycats, Pixie Bob. It would have been easy ... if Tora when I were allowed to use haki and go all out. But knew we have to keep our cover. I'm getting really tired of holding back and considering how many nights I've had to listen to her rant. She probably is too. After clearing the forest and acting like I was tired we had dinner, but not before Ada was punched in the shin by a very bratty child, and went to the hot springs. After an incident with Minta trying to sneak a peek at us and being thwarted by said bratty child the day was over, so I sent our coordinates to Compress and called it a day. The next day consisted of us pushing our quirks to the limit. I was with Sato since our quirks revolved around food. Bakugo stuck his organic hand into boiling water. Gyro used her ear jacks to hit a cliff. Ashido continuously secreted acid. Shoji had to try and find Tora. Koda had vocal exercises. And Kirishima had to let Ajiro hit him repeatedly among other types of training students had to do. At the end of the day we had to go through the test of courage. Little did everyone else know how much of a test it would be. General POV. Compress and Takoyami were currently a ways away from where the league is supposed to appear. They're close enough to see them, but far enough away to not be seen themselves. Granted, with observation haki this wasn't too difficult. Speaking which, Takoyami was currently using his observation haki search for Ida. My, it seems Joker was right. He's more fixated on revenge rather than following the plan. Oh well, good thing I was informed of this so I could plan around this. Needless to say, Takoyami wouldn't become an executive anytime soon with that kind of attitude. That's neither here nor there as Takoyami found Ida and began to make his way towards him. Compress didn't try to stop him as the boy was no longer his concern. It was at this moment that the League of Villains appeared and made their move. The villains who appeared were Mustard, Muscular, Moonfish, Magni, Kirigiri, Twice, and Shigaraki himself. Compress took this as his cue to enter the forest and to have some fun. Takoyami POV. I'll have to remember to thank Hagakure for helping me with my observation. It was only through haki that I was able to find Ida. It seemed like he was moving towards another presence, but that was none of my concern. If Ida could go out searching for revenge, then so can I. Are you ready, Dark Shadow? You know it, let's pummel this guy. Once we reached him, we saw him near a little kid. The kid was none of our concern though. He turned around right as we landed. Takoyami, I don't know why you are here, but leave at once. I will not allow you to harm Koda. The child is of no interest to me, backstabber. All I'm after is you. Yay, glasses, after you singled us out and accused us over something as petty as poor word choice, we've been think about getting our revenge and nothing else. Revenge. Vengeance is not becoming of a hero. If vengeance is your reasoning, then I was right to make my accusations. Vengeance is not becoming of a hero. This coming from the one who almost lost himself to the madness of vengeance when chasing after Stain. Ida's eyes widened at that. If I were to guess, I'd say he's surprised that I knew about that. Then his eyes narrowed. So you really are working with Joker? I am now. After all, you didn't give me much choice in the matter. Enough. If it is vengeance you want, you'll find it very hard to earn. We wouldn't have it any other way. General POV. Ida rushed towards Takoyami, but to his surprise the avian boy dodged with no effort before having Dark Shadow punch him into the cliffside. This continued on for most of the fight, but what Takoyami didn't realize was that he developed tunnel vision. All of his observation haki was focused on Ida and nowhere else. He then used armament to punch Ida's leg right as he kicked and shattered his femur. This elicited a scream from Ida and a laugh from Dark Shadow. He and Dark Shadow continued to beat on him, but his tunnel vision prevented him from sensing the giant mass of muscles that was about to crash into him. Muscular in all of his glory crashed down, killing Takoyami instantly due to his lack of protection, and permanently damaged Ida's legs beyond repair. By this point Kota had long since left, and with both teenagers incapacitated, Muscular was thoroughly disappointed. Meanwhile the class, Aizawa, and the Pussycats were dealing with other villains. The gas wasn't too much of a threat as Momo made gas masks for everyone. Despite this, everyone noticed when the gas disappeared. The reason for this was that Mustard was the most troublesome since Compress didn't have a gas mask. So he took the schoolboy out quickly before making his way towards the main crowd of people. His path was once again interrupted by a man who was covered from head to toe with only his mouth exposed. Moonfish then tried to impale Compress with his teeth, but considering Compress is an observation master, it didn't go too well. One well-placed haki strike later and Moonfish was down for the count. Once he arrived, the showman in him decided a grand entrance was in order. So he copied something his boss liked to do. If you're gonna take inspiration, take it from the best after all. Compress POV. I sat down on a tree branch with one leg crossed over the other. It's time to do my Joker impression. My, we have quite the rowdy bunch here now, don't we? Hey, I know you. Who the hell are you? Said the villain known as Twice. You can call me Mr. Compress. I am one of the executives of the Midorya family. I grinned under my mask as everyone's eyes widened at my declaration. Then a girl who looked like a frog asked me a surprising question. How did you get Takoyami to work for you, Ribbit? Oh, my young amphibian, that's the beauty of it. We didn't. This time the students gasped and whispered amongst themselves. Would you like to know why Tenya Ida accused Fumikage Takoyami, my dear? The girl nodded at this. My grin widened under my mask. You see, during his internship, Tenya Ida attempted to hunt down Stain in order to avenge his brother. During this sequence of events, my boss appeared and addressed him by name. When asked by Ida about how he knew his name, Joker replied, a little birdie told me and my dear students is why Tenya Ida accused Fumikage Takoyami. This caused looks of shame and anger to appear on the students' faces. But that accusation is baseless, Ribbit. Oh, you're telling me? When Joker told me to keep an eye on the kid for that very reason, I doubted the necessity. It turns out my boss was right. Unfortunately, it seems that young Takoyami fell into the same pit of vengeance against it. I sensed his death through my observation. Truly a shame. If he would have moved past his desire for vengeance, he would have made a fine executive. Before anyone could ask what I meant, a blonde mass of muscles charged out from the trees and grabbed Bakugo before jumping over to where the villains were. They then used the warp gate user to escape. Each talk about a rushed show. Those villains have no sense of showmanship. Oh well, time to go, I guess. Gyro POV. Crap, we can't let this villain escape. Especially since no one could reach Ragdoll for some reason. I was shocked to hear some very familiar voices say something they shouldn't have. You know, Compress, one could say that your sense of showmanship is your greatest weakness. However, I know you'll disagree, so we should probably just leave. Yay, can we finally leave? I'm really tired of holding back. Indeed, I too am eager to return to our Lord. Yea, honestly, with everything being said and done, I'm glad I don't have to work with these chumps from Wana anymore. I can't believe it. Momo, Hagakure, Monoma, and Shizaki. Why are they walking so casually toward that villain? Why are they talking like they're old friends? Why Momo, why are you walking towards him? Sorry, Gyro, but Toru and I were Izuku's informants, not Takoyami. Besides, he was little upset that his girlfriend slept with someone else, so I gotta make it up to him. I can't believe it. Momo is Joker's girlfriend. She and Hagakure were traitors all along. We followed Ida in forsaking Takoyami while the real traitors were some of our most trusted classmates. I couldn't take it and I broke down crying. Kirishima POV. What the hell, yeah, Momo? Why would you betray us like this? Betray Gyro like this? You mean besides the fact that I've been part of the family for 10 years? 10 years. She's been with them from the beginning. Damn it, and Gyro's no help right now. Toru, why? I thought we had something between us. Sorry, Gyro, but I've already got a boyfriend back with the family. Don't be discouraged, though. If we met before I met my sweet half-see, I probably would have dated you. Bye-bye. Monoma, Shizaki. Explain yourselves. I heard Vlad King shout. It's simple, they gave me what I need to outshine 1A. No matter how much encouragement you give us, we'll always be on the back burner, and I just can't accept that. With Joker and his family, I can reach my full potential. Joker is a man chosen by God, and I will always follow God's will." Then Momo said something that frightened all of us to our core. And let's just say that Izuku isn't the only one with spies in UA. Ta-ta. Compressed POV. Well, I think we have spent enough time indulging the kids' questions. So with that, I compressed all of them and made my way through the forest and towards the car we have stashed a ways away. However, I stopped when I found a peculiar-looking fruit. I released everyone before asking our most knowledgeable member a question. "Momo, this is a devil fruit, is it not?" Nito and Ibara gasped at my question. A devil fruit. The same fruit that gave Joker his godly power. It was Momo who responded. "Yes, it is. We should take it with us. Joker might have a use for it later." So with that, I compressed the fruit and we made our way back to our car. We then started our drive to the city. Now that we have all of our members again, we can prepare to annihilate the League of Villains. The entirety of UA's first-year heroes were, for lack of a better term, fed up. Not only did they have one of their classmates kidnapped, not only did they accuse the wrong student of being a traitor. On top of that, 4 students were actual traitors, and there was still another traitor among them. Gyro and Ajiro were hit hard by the betrayal of the ones they loved. The traitors' close friends were hit just as hard because they felt like they should have known better. The damage Eda took to his legs hurt Uraraka, since deep down she knew that even if he recovered, he wouldn't be able to be a hero anymore. Tsuyu, Koda, and Shoji were all distraught over Takoyami's death. Kaminari was nowhere to be found. Nezu, Aizawa, Vlad King, and All Might were at a loss on how to deal with the betrayal of their students. Toru's parents were burnt to a crisp by their daughter's boyfriend during the training camp incident and were only found when the staff went to inform them of their daughter's betrayal. Momo's parents faced bankruptcy as Calculator had transferred every last dollar of the Arazu family finances over to the many bank accounts used by their organization. The Pussycats were frantic in trying to find their missing teammate, Ragdoll. Things were not looking good for the heroes. On the villain side of things, reactions were mixed. Shigaraki was both happy and pissed at the same time. He was happy that they achieved their objective of capturing Bakugo. He was pissed because Bakugo wasn't cooperating, and Kaminari had to be pulled out of UA to avoid suspicion. Meanwhile, on Izuku's side of things, everything was going well. Momo and Toru were holding their boyfriends with no plans of letting go. Momo because her 3 weeks were up. Toru because Shadow killed her slave-driving parents. And Miko was excited that she would be able to have some fun with the League, while Dabi was keeping her from doing something stupid. Compress was helping Nito and Ibara come up with their code names. They eventually settled on Larceny for Nito and Poison Ivy for Ibara. Alright everyone, it's time to move out. With Bakugo captured, the heroes aren't just gonna sit on the sidelines. They're gonna make their move, and they're gonna do it soon. This is a once-in-a-life chance to humiliate not just the heroes, but the League of Villains too. Everyone nodded in affirmation and set out towards the Camino Ward. Meanwhile, the heroes were making their own trek to the Camino Ward at the same time as Aizawa's interview. Reporter, it has come to our attention that a training camp that was supposed to be secure was attacked by not one, but 2 different villain factions. What is your response to these accusations? Aizawa, what can I say? No matter how much I want things to be different, it won't change what happened. Reporter, not only that, but one of your students was kidnapped while another was critically injured. How can UA claim to be a safe school after this event? And the USJ incident. Aizawa, all we can claim is that we will increase our security in order to ensure something like this does not happen again. Reporter, and what about the information that 4 of your students were actually spies for the villain known as Joker? Nezu, I will take over from here. Aizawa, the 4 traitors are a precarious topic. Reporter, how so? 4 of your students that you let into your school were villains all along and you knew nothing. That is incompetence if ever I saw it. Nezu, oh really? Then is it safe to assume that you are an expert at rooting out villainous infiltrators? Then perhaps you would like to be the principal for UA. In fact, please tell me how you would like me to learn the identities of dangerous criminals that even heroes who specialized in underworld investigations cannot figure out. After all, until the USJ incident, no one knew any of the identities of the Midorya family executives. While you could argue that such a fact points towards the incompetence of heroes, the fact of the matter is that these individuals are easily the most dangerous villains of this era. While their power, reach, and presence are all frightening, the truly terrifying thing is how they are able to keep information about themselves secret. Reporter, you say that their secrecy is their most fearsome quality, yet all of this information is spilling out at once. How do you explain that? Nezu, it's quite simple really. The reason we know everything that we do about the Midorya crime family is because they allow us to know it. As this interview is going on, both heroes and executives are closing in on the League of Villains. Izuku and his executives waited back so the heroes could make their move, thus giving them the element of surprise. The heroes moved in and it seemed like they had the League in their grasp. However, Izuku knew this was not the case. It was at that moment that All for One made his appearance. 5 years ago, and Izuku might have been frightened. Now, however, he saw the older villain as someone to toy around with. Alright everyone, you know who your targets are, let's move. With that, each person found their target. Dabi and Shadow stood before Endeavor. Compress was ready to face off against Muscular. Toru snuck up on Mustard. Nito cornered Kaminari. Toga went against Moonfish. Ibara walked towards Magni. Momo approached both Shigaraki and Twice. Izuku sat on a building whilst staring down All for One and All Might. The battles all began right as Toru slit Mustard's throat. Nito POV. I was so ready to throw down against this one a punk. So I was quite irritated when he did what I least expected. I give, Kaminari said as he put his hands in the air. I'm sorry, come again. I said I give. I'm not stupid, I know when I'm outclassed. He said calmly. I took exception to that. So I rushed forward and gave him a haki-powered punch to the jaw and knocked him out instantly. I then followed Toru's lead and started going after heroes. I decided to take a stab at Edge Shot. Toru POV. After slitting the schoolboy's throat, I went after some of the heroes. The third-rate heroes fell like nothing, but a short old man that was speeding about proved to be a decent challenge. Unfortunately for him, my reaction time coupled with observation haki let me keep up with him. You're quite fast for someone without an enhancer-type quirk, young lady. You know what they say. Practice makes perfect, I said as I left a deep cut in his side. Momo POV. Taking on Shigaraki and Twice wasn't as difficult as one would expect. Shigaraki was very straightforward with his attacks, so it was laughably easy to dodge. Twice's multiple personality disorder prevented him from making the most efficient choices in combat. If he were against a normal person, his lack of predictability would have made up for that. Unfortunately for him, I am not a normal person. Haki made things easier than they already were. I didn't bother to use observation, but armament surprisingly prevented my creations from being disintegrated by Shigaraki's quirk. Their reactions were quite funny too, if I'm being honest. Why won't you just die already? It's because she's way too tough. It's because you're way too weak. I actually did laugh at those comments, and that only served to rile them up even more. Man, I was gonna have so much fun with them. Compress POV. My, this brute had no coordination whatsoever. He was quite the slugger, I must say, but that only made it easier for me to parry each of his attacks. Dodging was just as easy, if not easier, and I switched off between parrying and dodging for the sole purpose of irritating him. Needless to say, it was working. Stop effing running away, you goddamn piece of shit coward. Yawn. You son of a bitch, I quote, I'll kill you. I can see why Joker and Momo loved toying with people. It was such a delight. After a few more minutes of this, I compressed him before crushing the marble, thus killing him. It was time for me to move on after all. Perhaps Gang Orca would make a good challenge. Himeko POV. This guy sucked. He was so covered up that no matter how many times I cut him, I still couldn't see him bleed. His teeth were super gross too. I mean, I knew they were dangerous, but they never really posed a threat to any of us. The guy was so creepy too. All he talked about was flesh, like he was a effing zombie. I wanted this done quickly, so I threw a haki-infused knife into his head and picked a new target. Who, you ask? Best Genist, of course. Come on, genie boy, let mama see your blood, I said as I charged him. Most people consider his Fiber Master quirk to be quite threatening, but it was nothing compared to Joker's strings. Hell, his quirk might as well be a knockoff. How distasteful of you. Not only should you learn to respect your elders, you also need a lesson in manners, young lady, he said while trying to catch me with his fibers. Too bad for him, he's way too slow. I could tell from the look on his face that he was wondering how I could avoid all of his attempts to capture me. Too bad no one's gonna explain haki to him. I ran right past him and gave him several gashes on his arms and legs. This time I could see my prey bleed. I was gonna have so much fun with him. I licked my lips in anticipation. Ibara POV. The villain known as Magni was easy enough to deal with. Observation made getting her magnet away from her easy, and combining my vines with armament was all it took to take her out of commission. Once that was done, I decided that there were bigger fish to fry. Like Mount Lady. My word, what a terribly vain woman. I attempted to wrap my vines around her. She used her quirk to grow in size. Little did she know that simply growing would not allow her to break free from her sins or my vines. With her having to watch every step and me being able to move my vines as precisely as necessary, I had the clear advantage. Even without armament, I was practically toying with her, which is why Kamui Woods took her place. He will prove to be much more of a challenge. Regardless, I will overcome all trials God throws my way. Dabi POV. Well, if it ain't dear old dad. This time the one who will be scarred is you. You two obviously have a lot left to learn if you think you can hold a candle to me. It seems I'll have to remind you of the pecking order. And with that said and done, all three of us launched a torrent of flames. You see though, Shadow and I didn't just want to beat Dad. We wanted to massacre him. So we infused our flames with haki. They immediately broke through his own flames and engulfed him. Normally his quirk allows him to be immune to flames for all intents and purposes. Unfortunately for him, his quirk doesn't account for the extra boost our flames got from Haki. The result was instantaneous. His cries of agony were music to my ears. They were probably music to Shadow's ears too. He's just too stoic to show it. He rushed out of our flames and began a counterattack. But each and every time our flames overpowered his. Despite all of his trash talk, he never stood a chance. The moment we met Izuku that fateful day, his own fate was sealed. Shadow POV. I have to admit, roasting Dad like a Thanksgiving turkey has been more satisfying than I thought it would be. Maybe Dabi is onto something when he says burning people alive is fun. I wouldn't know. I usually use my ice since I wanted Dad to be the first victim of my flames. After this though, I might have to give it a shot. Since attacking us at range wasn't working, Dad tried to get us up close and personal. Needless to say, it didn't work. Each time he tried, we would always dodge before coating him in flames time and time again. At one point, Mount Lady tried to help our damn father, but a glacier to the ribs made sure that didn't happen. At this point, he was sprawled on the ground. So Dabi and I walked up to him and burned him to death. I have to admit, I could definitely get used to the screams. It was at that moment, however, that Kamui Woods arrived to help Mount Girl. I have no idea why he thought challenging 2 fire users was a good idea, but the battle, if you could call it that, ended quickly. As we made our way back, we saw Himiko toying around with Best Jeanist, Compressed dancing around Gang Orca, Toru was countering each attack Gran Torino made, Nito was having fun with Edgeshot, while Momo and Ibara slapped around Shigaraki and Twice respectively. Izuku POV. I sat on a roof and watched All Might and All For One go at it for a few minutes before I decided to step in. And by steppin' I mean I gave All For One a Haki-infused knee to the chest. I don't know what your circumstances are, but it seems like we are on the same side, young mid. I cut off All Might's declaration with a palm strike to his solar plexus. Now don't misunderstand my actions, All Might. If I'm being honest, I'd be more likely to team up with All For One. Why? What did I do to you? He asked as he and All For One got back on their feet. Indeed, I must admit I too am curious as to what he did. Tell me, All Might, do you remember crushing a little kid's dreams about 10 years ago? Because guess what? That little kid took your words to heart. The look on All Might's face told me that his heart dropped. You were that kid. The one who saw me catch the villain responsible for the Mustafu apartment fire. Yeah, well, you didn't stop him fast enough to save my mom. I'm truly sorry, young Midor. This time I cut him off with a roundhouse to the chin that sent him flying into All For One. The time for talk is over, All Might. Now stand up and fight. I'll take both of you on, I said as my grin widened and Haki covered my arms and legs. The 3 of us clashed right after that. General POV. Everyone stopped their fights to watch the one that was currently going on. Every news station was covering it. The kids at UA, Ketsubutsu, and Shiksu, among other schools, all watched the titanic clash with awe. Even the TVs at the hospitals played it so Uraraka and Ida could watch it. Every viewer had the same thought run through their heads. This isn't a fight between men. This is a battle that will go down in history. And it was the truth. Each participant in the fight was the top fighter of their respective faction. No one else could ever possibly compete. On one side was All Might, the symbol of peace and the #1 hero. Next to him was All For One, the originator of One For All and the only person who could fight All Might as an equal. And opposite to both of them was the scariest of the 3, Izuku Joker Midorya, the 15-year-old head of the Midorya crime family who is apparently capable of fighting both All Might and All For One by himself. Not one of these legendary fighters gave an inch. Each strike was backed by 100% of the physical force they could muster. However, everyone noticed that Izuku began to block rather than dodge. Both of the older fighters saw this as a chance and prepared their strongest attacks. All Might prepared his United States of Smash, while All For One prepared a deadly quirk combination that could easily rival his nemesis's strongest move. Most people thought that Izuku was about to lose. His executives, however, knew better. Right as they threw these titanic punches, however, Izuku jumped high enough into the air to avoid the rush of air pressure from each attack completely. And he stood there in the middle of the air as his 2 opponents' attacks were stopped prematurely. Everyone watching wondered what happened until their worst nightmares were confirmed. The arms the 2 legends used to throw their punches seemingly exploded into an unidentifiable mass of blood and flesh. It was then that everyone realized Izuku hadn't used his strings for the entire fight. All Might deflated and All For One crumbled under the strain of using so many quirks. To the world's horror, Izuku Midorya defeated All For One and All Might. He was bruised and bleeding, a state no one has ever seen him in before, but he still won. It was at this moment that Momo killed Shigaraki and Twice. The League of Villains died that night, and the symbol of peace was torn from his pedestal. The era of the Midoriya family had truly begun. Time skip 1 month. A lot has happened since the Battle of the Big 3, as the media put it. Let's start with the heroes. Edgeshot and Gran Torino were the least injured heroes. However, Gran Torino went back into retirement. Edgeshot went back to work in hopes of quelling the skyrocketing crime rate. Gang Orca and Best Jeanist are still hospitalized, but are predicted to make their returns relatively soon. Mount Lady had to have surgery in order to save her life, and she has yet to regain consciousness. Several pros mourn the deaths of Kamui Woods and Endeavor. Rei Todoroki was temporarily released so she could accompany Fayumi to the Flame Hero's funeral. Rei wasn't overly broken up about her abusive husband's death, but she felt that it was her duty as a mother to be there for Fayumi. Natsuo also showed up, but like Rei was only there to support Fayumi. They would never say it out loud out of respect for Fayumi, but the mother and brother silently wished Dabi and Shoto the best of luck in their new lives. Fayumi, on the other hand, couldn't believe that her brothers were capable of such an atrocity and openly condemned them. All Might was hooked up to life support and would be for the foreseeable future. Night-Eye brought former UA third-year Mirio Tagata in to see his idol. It was after a heartfelt reunion that Toshinori Yagi passed one for all onto Mirio and begged the boy with tears streaming down his face to be a better hero than he could ever be. He begged him to not repeat the mistake that created the villain known as Joker. All three heroes shared a tearful embrace before Night-Eye took Mirio to help build the path for the next symbol of peace. Once he was alone, Night-Eye broke down as he saw that All Might's future was one of regret and despair. With the students, things were just as bad, if not worse. Ada was brutally scolded by Aizawa and Nezu for his role in Fumikage Takoyami's death. Tsuyu joined Takoyami's family in calling Ida a murderer. Uraraka stayed by his side throughout his surgery, but left him after she heard him deny their teacher's scoldings by claiming he did what he did with his classmates' best interests at heart. What truly broke Ada was when he heard his brother's disappointment at his quick accusation with no concrete basis. Tenya Ida's leg damage would prevent him from ever being a hero. With UA closed down, all of the teachers went back to being pro-heroes as they realized that the rising crime rate wasn't going to stop itself. Several students transferred to other hero schools like Shiketsu or Ketsubutsu, among others. However, there were those who couldn't bear the danger and became normal citizens. Among the latter group was Minoru Mainta, Koji Koda, Ponitsu Notori, Rin Huryu, Hantashiro, Kyoka Jiro, and Kinoko Komori. None of their ex-classmates blamed them, and everyone still kept in touch regardless of if they were on the path of heroism or not. The Yaorazu family came under fire for being unaware of their daughter's villainous affiliations. The family lost their prestige, and while still wealthy compared to the middle class, they would never regain their former prestige. Things were happier for the villains. Momo and Izuku spent days releasing the sexual tension they had built up over the 3 weeks of Momo's punishment. Shoto and Tora spent a lot of time together now that she didn't have a fake life to maintain. They commonly went on double dates with Dabi and Himiko. Nito and Ibara came together after Nito gave a heartfelt confession on his admiration for the vine-haired girl. She immediately made it known that she would not have sex before marriage and was surprised when Nito accepted it with no hesitation. Izuku learned that one Tomoko Shiretoko, better known as the hero Ragdoll, was in a less than pleasant mood. According to his informants, her friends had spent more time trying to regain their ranking rather than comforting their now quirkless comrade. She would unwittingly vent to info brokers who would ask why she seemed down, which was why he was currently sitting in a chair in her living room waiting for her to return to the home she shared with Mandalay's nephew Kota. Izuku POV. I was waiting for just shy of 3 hours when I heard the door open. She walked past me and set her groceries in the kitchen before coming back to the living room and turned the light on. It was then that she saw me and immediately jumped back into a fighting stance. I figured that I should at least show that I meant no harm, so I put my hands in the air. Relax, Ms. Shiretoko. I mean no harm. Why should I trust you? After what your family did to the heroes 1 month ago, I suppose you don't really have any reason to trust me. I would still like for you to listen to what I have to say. My hands will not move from where they are. Fine, but make it quick and then leave. Of course. Before I start, may I ask how you are doing? How I'm doing? Why? It's plain to see that you're on edge, like you're on the verge of snapping. Is it because All for One took your quirk? So what if it is? I see. You have my sincere condolences. Why do you even care? Because I know what it's like to be quirkless. Her eyes widened with shock before they narrowed with anger. How could you possibly know? You have a powerful quirk that was capable of going head-to-head with All Might. Is my quirklessness that much of a joke to you? It is not a joke, I said with no trace of a smile on my face. My power is not a quirk. I was diagnosed as quirkless at age 4. I had the second joint in my toe and everything. Her eyes then adopted a look of sadness as she saw how quirkless kids were treated. I decided to continue without missing a beat. One day my bully Katsuki Bakugo force-fed me a weird-looking fruit. It had an odd color and a distinct swirling pattern on it. It was incredibly bitter and tasted horrible. That same day I was able to produce the strings that made me who I am today and used them to get my mom out of our burning apartment building. Unfortunately, I wasn't fast enough to save her, but that's neither here nor there. Later that day I discovered the weakness of this weird power. A friend of my mom took me and let me take a bath. Unfortunately, with each second I was submerged, my power was sapped away until I almost drowned. unable to even lift a finger. Where are you going with this? Why tell me any of this? Because, Tomoko Shiretoko, quirks aren't the only ways to obtain powers. You see, several years later my family discovered a book that revealed the origin of my power. The fruit I was force-fed was called a devil fruit. These fruits give the one who consumes them a certain ability in exchange for their ability to swim. Tomoko laughed at my claim. I can't really blame her, it did sound ridiculous. Good story, Joker, but get to the point. Very well. Look to the table to my left and tell me what you see. A fruit. Take a closer look to it. As she got closer her eyes widened. A fruit with an odd coloration and a swirl pattern. You weren't joking. You ate a fruit and got a quirk from it. Precisely. You see, I'm quite aware of your former team's neglectful behavior. And to be quite frank, it sickens me. For the umpteenth time that day I could see shock written all over the older woman's face. My guess was that she never expected a villain to sympathize with her. You see, the media describes me as a heartless monster because I dethroned the symbol of peace. However, I am not feared because I am heartless. I am feared because I have a heart. My executives are all family to me. I would cross through hell itself if it meant protecting them. Sure, I have money, power, and a strong ability, but it's my family that keeps me going. So to see your teammates leave you in the dust fills me with sadness. I guess my face conveyed my sadness because I could see the tears welling up in her eyes. The reason I'm here is because I would like to ask you to join me. I would like to extend the offer of a family that will go through the armies of heaven and earth for one another. My offer isn't one of a new ability, as I plan on leaving this devil fruit with you regardless of whether or not you join me. My offer is one of unconditional love and care. With that said and done, the older woman fell to her knees and let her tears fall. I walked over to her and made a motion with my hand as Compress came out from his hiding spot. We both knelt near her and wrapped her in a hug that she reciprocated. Tomoko POV. I can't believe it. This kid, this murderer, this villain understood me when my own sisters didn't. He was here comforting me while they were worried about their fame. I felt a multitude of emotions. Anger at my teammates, sadness for myself and my situation, and gratitude towards the two men currently holding me and whispering sweet nothings into my ears. I accept. I managed to choke out through my tears. Joker let me go to grab the power-granting fruit while the one known as Mr. Compress maintained his hold on me. Joker used his strings to cut off a piece of the fruit and handed it to me. Don't I need to sniffle eat the whole thing? According to the book we found, the amount eaten doesn't really matter. Compress answered. I took their word for it and ate it. Joker was right. It tasted horrible. Sniffles. So how do I activate this new power mine? Joker gave me a deadpan face and a shocking answer. Hell if I know. What do you mean hell if I know? Didn't you eat one? I said angrily. I did. There are two reasons why I don't know. First, I used it to save my mom in a moment of desperation. So my first use of my ability was instinctual. The second reason is that devil fruits come under 3 types: Paramecia types, Zoan types, and Logia types. Each type works differently, and that's not taking into account the differences between each individual fruit. He made a good point. I was considering how to possibly discover my ability when I heard a voice come from behind me. Thank you, Mr. Joker. Coda, what are you doing awake? I heard you talking to someone, so I came by to see who it was. And I heard Mr. Joker offering you the happiness you deserve. Even though people say he's a villain, if he can give my Aunt Tomoko the happiness everyone else should give her, then I can't bring myself to hate him. I hate heroes, but I can't hate this man who is saving you, Auntie. Oh, Coda, I'm so sorry that I'm leaving you. I cried out as I hugged him. It's okay, Auntie, you deserve the happiness these people can offer you. Joker, you better protect Aunt Tomoko, you understand me? It is as I said. We would cross hell itself to protect one of our family. And Tomoko is family now, he said with a confident smile. Indeed, young man. I remember a time several years ago a gang that was by all means more powerful than us at the time captured Momo and Toro. Joker mobilized the entire family without hesitation in order to get them back. Logically speaking, it was a horrible idea and the odds were stacked against us. He didn't care though. Getting those two back was more important to him than victory, and we all knew it. That is why we follow him, because no matter what, we matter to him. I smiled as Compress told his story. I could see Joker no Izuku beaming with pride as Compress spoke about him. I would be proud too if my family had that much faith in me. Coda, on the other hand, was awed. Really? You did that? Izuku knelt before him and said, of course, kiddo. Family is important after all. And with that I knew I was making the right choice. I let Coda talk to the two villains some more while I packed my things. I gave him a kiss on the head and sent him to bed right before I left and walked towards my new life. General POV. The next day when Coda was asked where Tomoko was by Madeley, the boy only said one thing. She's with people who care more about her rather than fame. He would never betray his Aunt Tomoko by saying more and ignored any other questions on the matter. No matter how hard the 3 cat-themed heroes tried, they couldn't find their ex-partner. Izuku POV. 1 week later, I decided that Katsuki needed a reminder that I hadn't forgotten him since I let him return to the heroes 1 month ago. which is why I'm standing in front of his clearly scared parents. Why are you here, Izuku? Was taking our son's arm and dishonoring your mother's memory not enough for you? Masaru Bakugo said. I could tell he was just trying to put on a tough front though. No, actually it wasn't enough. You see, I plan on making Katsuki suffer. I already took his arm and dethroned his idol. What better way to rub salt on his wounds than to take away the two people that always believed in him? You sick F. I can't believe you dreamed of being a hero, you monster. Mitsuki, please don't provoke him. I gotta agree with you there. I can't believe I wanted to be a hero either. And with that the carnage began. It took a while for Tomoko to get past the fact that despite my love for my family I was still inherently evil. Eventually she came to understand when she saw her ex-teammates continuing to seek fame despite her disappearance. It was that sight that cemented her place in our family and set her on the path of evil. Back to the present, however, the Bakugo household was now a crimson disaster zone. The only thing remaining of the two parents were their heads, which were placed on the coffee table facing the door. I took my leave after that and returned home. After all, I had a meeting with the Yakuza tomorrow. Izuku POV. My god, these Yakuza types are so effing dull. They're pretty stupid too. Oh, we're gonna get rid of quirks so we can feel good about ourselves? Spectacular. I don't get why they think I care. Besides, even if they manage to wipe quirks off of the face of the earth, eventually there would be some sort of mutation or evolutionary change that would once again render the Yakuza obsolete. So will you join our organization, Joker? Asked Overhaul. You see, that is one of many problems I have right there. You see, the way you phrased that question implies that you are going to take control of and give orders to us, and that just won't fly. Overhaul's more loyal followers immediately took exception to this and started saying things along the line of, you dare disrespect our boss, to which I responded that I was disrespecting their boss. Fortunately for them, Overhaul intervened. Allow me to ask what the problem with the arrangement is? We have all of the knowledge on quirk erasure, so why shouldn't we be the ones giving the orders? Despite wearing masks, I could tell his followers were quite smug. That's another problem. You're assuming I actually give a damn about your plan to erase quirks. After all, the existence of quirks is inconsequential to my organization. Each of my members is capable of performing their job efficiently with or without their quirks, and that is the only reason I'm even here. Because in the grand scheme of things, quirks don't matter to us. Hell, each executive has several quirkless people working under them, and they do their jobs just as good as everyone else. So allow me to repeat myself. You giving us orders simply isn't going to fly. I could tell I shocked everyone in the room. I can't really blame them. An organization with people who have very powerful quirks just admitted that quirks wouldn't make a difference in the grand scheme of things. Now that I think about it, I would be shocked if I heard that too. If it weren't for my knowledge of Haki and the like, that is. Overhaul snapped out of his stupor first. Very well, then what would it take to get you to work with us? How about this? I want to know everything about how these quirk erasing bullets are made. Every step, every ingredient, everything. Then my organization will take over distribution. After all, we have far more territory and more manpower. And since production and distribution is split evenly, the pay will be 50/50. How's that sound? Overhaul's lackeys immediately protested my choice of demands. Hell, I could see a vein about to burst on the man's own forehead. It seemed that he was smarter though. Very well, I will show you everything. But only you, your followers, will wait here. That's fair. He indeed kept his word. He showed me his labs, his machinery. He went through every step, including the part where he repeatedly dismantled a little girl in order to get the quirk erasing part done. The second he got to that part, my smile dropped. It took every ounce of willpower to keep me from slaughtering him right there. The only reason I didn't was because I planned to do so much worse. Not only was I going to end him, I was going to get all 8 precepts arrested or ended. I was going to dismantle his entire operation, and I was going to show this little girl a true family. But that takes time. So I kept my wrath reined in and let him finish his explanations. As we left Compress and Ragdoll, the executives I chose to take with me noticed something amiss. Joker, is something wrong? The ex-hero asked. We are destroying them and everything they stand for. This statement shocked them, as I had just agreed to working with the Yakuza. Their shock turned into rage when I explained the little girl and her role. I sent Compress and Ragdoll back to the warehouse to let the others know the plan. I had a visit to make. After all, if my spies were correct, Night Eye was going to make his scheduled visit to All Might right about now. Night Eye POV. How are you doing, All Might? For someone who can see the future, you sure do ask a lot of questions. I sighed. He's become more snarky and cynical as of late. Sometimes it's impossible to even hold a conversation with him. I try to be patient with him though. What usually gets him to calm down a little is hearing of Mirio's progress. My. That was quite rude of you, All Might. After all, the man is only concerned about your well-being. I heard come from the window. All Might and I both looked and saw Joker sitting on the windowsill. I was about to jump at him, but my body wouldn't move. Whoa there, Night Eye. Relax, I come in peace. Do you really expect me to believe that? And like that his smile dropped. As a matter of fact, that is exactly what I expect. I've heard you've been looking into the Yakuza, is that right? How did you know that? I know a lot of things. It's one of the reasons I'm as dangerous as I am. You see, the Yakuza has gotten on my bad side. I believe you know they are researching Quirk erasure. I am aware. One of Fatgum's interns had his Quirk temporarily erased by a bullet. They know how to make the erasure permanently now. My eyes widened with shock. After all, permanent Quirk erasure is quite hard to believe. I was even more shocked by what he said next. I will give you all the information you need to know, with the one condition being that overhaul is mine. What exactly did he do to earn your ire? That's none of your concern. As someone who wishes to avoid such a thing, I think it is. It is nothing you heroes would or should be involved in. That's all I'm going to get, isn't it? That is correct. I let out a annoyed sigh. Very well, I accept your offer. He then tossed me a folder right as I answered. He then said something quite shocking before leaving. All might. You were wrong. Quirkless people can make a difference. Several quirkless people in my organization are just as efficient as those with quirks. They only need love, support, and motivation. You would do well to remember such a thing, as that was where you came from. I have no clue how he knew such a thing. I could only assume that he spoke to All for One about it at some point in time. Granted, he did say his knowledge is what made him dangerous. So who knows where he got the information. I said goodbye to my old mentor and made my way back to my agency. I had information to look over and plans to make. Timeskip Yakuza invasion. Izuku POV. My. I must say, Night Eye sure can put on a show. We hardly needed to do any work. I sent Compress and Ragdoll to find the girl. Compress could get the girl out easily, and this would be good field practice for Ragdoll's devil fruit and hack. She got observation down right away, but considering what her quirk was, I shouldn't be too surprised. Armament and her devil fruit transformations, on the other hand, she struggled with sometimes. I then sent Momo to deal with any of the 8 precepts the heroes couldn't handle. I made my way to Overhaul. He was going to die very, very, very painfully. Momo POV. Izuku gave me such a boring job. For the most part, the heroes didn't need any of my intervention. I dealt with the guy who could meld with his surroundings. But observation made that incredibly easy. I know you. You were the class representative of UA's first-year hero class. Night Eye Ho. He might actually be a challenge. Indeed I am. You are Night Eye, a hero with the ability to see the future. That I am. I'm sure you are aware of my arrangement with your boss. I am. Then you know that me bringing you in doesn't go against our agreement. I hope you aren't expecting an easy fight, Night Eye. I'm much stronger than I look. I make it a point not to underestimate dangerous criminals like you. I smirked at that and rushed towards him. Night Eye POV. This girl was good. I can see why we was able to toy with 2 members of the League's Vanguard Action Squad. She's more skilled than several pros and is even giving me a run for my money. She isn't unbeatable, however, although she seems unusually capable of predicting my movements. Almost like a second Quirk. That isn't possible though, or is it? We traded blows evenly. Her prediction and creation versus my greater experience and skill. It was quite a matchup, and one that I seemed to be losing. However, I had yet to read her future, so I still had the upper hand. Ragdoll POV. Man, this new power of mine is great. I believe Joker called it the cat fruit model leopard. I may have trouble with my transformations right now, but it still gives me an awesome advantage. Claws, fangs, superior agility, you name it. Compress was mostly letting me tear through the villains we came across. I appreciate it since it's basically free devil fruit and hacky practice. Speaking hacky, so far I have yet to fail in using armament, which is a new record. Sure, it isn't as powerful as the others, but it's more than most of the world has. Another record is that so far I've only made 1 transformation mistake. I'm happy to be getting the hang of this stuff. It's so weird in comparison to my old quirk after all. I transformed back to my human form since my observation told me that we were getting close to where the kid was. Once we got to her, I could tell how scared she was. I was about to say something, but Compress beat me to it. Excuse me, young lady, may I ask your name? He said while kneeling down to her level. Idiri. I see, quite a beautiful name for a beautiful young girl. Her eyes widened. Really? But of course, one would be a fool to think otherwise. The girl started crying, but I could tell from experience that it was happy crying. I could only smile at Compress no Atsuhiro. He sure had a way with the ladies. The men here treated you badly, did they not? As such, I want to ask, would you like to come with us? No, I mean I want to, but Chisaki will hurt you guys. I don't want you to get hurt. Atsuhiro and I looked at each other and laughed. Iri didn't seem to understand, so I explained. We aren't worried, Iri. You see, our boss is on his way to deal with Chisaki right now. You've probably seen him before. He's the guy with the green shirt and the black feathers on his back. He's your boss. Frap, I spooked her. Luckily, Atsuhiro came to my rescue. Iri, our boss usually smiles. Did he stop smiling at any time during the time that you saw him? Yay. When Chisaki hurt me. You see, the reason for that was that Chisaki upset our boss by hurting you. Really? Really, you see, our boss is rarely without a smile on his face. He only drops his smile when something really upsets him. I came up with something that might open her up. Harry, do you know what family is? And no, it's when someone loves you unconditionally and will do anything to help and support you. There can be disagreements between family members, but no matter what, family will always be there for you. All of us that work under Joker are his family. She looked at us in awe. Really? Do you know why he was upset when Chisaki hurt you? No, why was he upset? I chose to let Atsuhiro explain since he had known Joker far longer than I had. He was upset because once upon a time he too used to be hurt by those with more power than him. So when he saw you get hurt, it was then that he saw himself in you. He saw someone with no family getting hurt for the whims of someone stronger. At that moment he decided that he would be your family so you would never be hurt again. She started crying again. This time Atsu and I both hugged her and comforted her the same way he and Joker comforted me not that long ago. This man truly had a way with words. Eri then looked up and saw some thugs running towards us and got our attention. I was about to take them out when Atsu put his coat over Eri and began to calmly walk towards them. Lady, you have to help him, he'll get hurt. I just laughed. Don't worry about Atsu. He's one of the strongest people I know. It was at that moment that he began to attack and compress the gangsters with the grace of an experienced acrobat and the flair of a magician. He was putting on a show for Eri. Woo, was all the young girl could say. With that done, I picked her up with Atsu's coat still wrapped around her and we walked off. Izuku POV. Why? Why are you in my way and not taking out the heroes? Because the heroes and I share a common enemy. You. After all, I didn't take too kindly to what you were doing to that girl. Her quirk ends people. I turned it into something that would grant equality to all. Blah. I heard you spew your bullshit once already. I don't need to hear it a second time. This seemed to set him off since he rushed at me right as I said those words. Unfortunately for him, I was still quite pissed. He was forced to jump back as string erupted from the floor and almost impaled him. What's this? I thought you could only produce strings from your body. Well, I suppose since you're about to die, I can afford to spill the secret. You see, when I was 4, I ate what was called a devil fruit. These fruits grant those who eat them extraordinary powers in exchange for their ability to swim. Several years later, I achieved what is called Devil Fruit Awakening. My awakening allows me to turn my surroundings into strings that I can manipulate. So you see, Chisaki, I am going to use the full power of my awakening to end you very painfully. He looked quite scared as I explained myself to him. That isn't good enough. He needs to look like he's suffering before I'm done with him. Not IPOV. It was tough, but I was finally able to beat her. By looking into her future, I was able to pinpoint a moment where she failed to predict one of my attacks and used that moment to get the drop on her and bring her into custody. We were already on our way back to my agency. I trusted the others to bring in the 8 precepts. Izuku POV. Now this just wasn't fair for poor little Chisaki. He would use his quirk to attack me only for my strings to attack him while blocking his attacks. He was bruised and bleeding while not one hair on my head was moved out of place. I would cut off his arm, he used his quirk to get it back. My, what a troublesome fellow. Between my awakening and his quirk, we destroyed the entire compound and were now topside. A quick burst of observation showed that Compress and Ragdoll had the girl and were heading back home. It also showed that Night Eye had captured Momo. Didn't he want to avoid earning my wrath? Oh well, I'll deal with him later. I decided to stop taking it easy on Chisaki and I cut him to pieces. Then I stitched him back together. I then repeated this process again and again until his body was more string than flesh. A quick glance showed every hero looking on in shock at this insane power that I didn't use on All Might or All for One. Then in a supreme display of brutality, I reduced him to a mere stain on the pavement in less than a second. I then returned my awakened strings to the proper materials and made my way towards the car with Night Eye and Momo. I dropped in front of them and surrounded their vehicle with my awakened strings. Really, Night Eye? You claim to want to avoid pissing me off, then you go and try and take the woman I love away from me. I must say, not the smartest move you've made. I thought you would be dealing with overhaul right now. Been there, done that. I see, I suppose I should have expected that from you. Momo decided to pop her head out of the vehicle. I told you that you wouldn't get too far. That you did, Ms. Yaorazu. So Night Eye, have you prayed to whatever god you believe in? Do you have any last words before I end you? Only that my quirk hasn't failed me yet, he said as he began dodging my awakened attacks. I would be impressed if I didn't know he could see into the future. Unfortunately for him, he can't move midair. So another hero fell before me, this time permanently. I broke Momo's cuffs, gave her a hug and a kiss, picked her up, and made my way back to the warehouse. We had a new family member to greet after all. General POV. Himiko was squealing with happiness. Why, you ask? Well, for one, Tomoko and Compress started dating. 2, she won $300 because Toru, Momo, and Shadow all believed that Tomoko would be the one to initiate the relationship. She and Izuku both believed that Compress would, and they were right. Dabi, Nito, and Ibara all didn't particularly care. 3 was playing with Izuku and both of them looked adorable. 4 She and Dabi had a date planned for today and she was very, very, very excited. Hey Dabi, hey Dabi, hey Dabi, hey Dabi. When are we going on our date? We'll go in a little bit. Settle down. Not possible. This is the first date we've gone on since before Momo and Toru snuck into UA. Sorry, not sorry. Fine. We'll go now. Don't act like such a sourpuss. You know you're just as excited as I am. Maybe you're right, but at least I can keep it reined in. Composure is overrated. Dabi just sighed, took her hand in his, and began walking towards the door. Himiko skipped right beside him. She was a sucker for things like dates and hand-holding and such. Her schoolgirl outfit wasn't just for show, you know. The first destination on Dabi's planned itinerary was a humble, Gothic-styled cafe that he frequented. He figured his psychotic princess would be able to appreciate the place and its style. Once they went inside, Himiko squealed and Dabi just smirked. Why did she squeal, you ask? Oh my god, there are cats everywhere. They're so cute. I thought you might like it. They found their way to a table and began looking at the menu. Once a waitress came by, Dabi ordered coffee while Himiko ordered a sandwich and tea. They talked with each other about several topics such as how the family is doing, how criminals are learning not to get in the family's way faster than normal, and even normal stuff like movies, clothes, and gossip regarding heroes. All in all, once you got past the talk of the family, the two criminals looked and sounded like a normal couple out on a normal date. That is until gunfire crashed through the building, ending several people and clipping Himiko in the chest, right leg, and left shoulder. If his girlfriend hadn't been hit, he would have roasted the perpetrator the moment it happened. However, his main priority was getting Himiko fixed up and as a result let the shooter get away. The scarred man immediately rushed his injured girlfriend to the family's resident doctor. Doc Q was used to people barging into his office since criminals have a tendency to get injured. What he wasn't used to was an executive bursting into his office while holding another severely injured executive. My word, what the hell happened? Some prick shot up the cafe we were at. Once she's stable, I'll roast whoever did it and their effing family. My, if they hadn't hit one of our family members, I'd pity the fool who pissed you off. Dabi, set her on the operating table, please. I'll get to work immediately. Dabi set her on the table and let the not-so-good doctor do his work. He informed the other executives and Himiko's lieutenant know what happened. They immediately rushed over. Daz Bones, Himiko's lieutenant, was the first to speak. Dabi, how's the boss doing? Doc Q's working on her. She should be stabilized anytime now. Izuku, did you do as I asked? The crime boss nodded. I did. On our way here, I got a call from Orihara of Shinjuku. According to him, the one responsible is a 45-year-old, quirkless American named Benjamin Poindexter. Dabi raised his eyebrow. What's an American doing here? I don't know. I don't particularly care either. I don't think you really do either. You're right, I don't. What's his address? It's already plugged into the car's GPS. Take him out. Everyone's been made aware that you're the only one allowed to touch him. Thanks, boss man. Think nothing of it. With that, Dabi ran to the villain's car and took off. The shooter lived in an apartment complex in room 131. Once Dabi arrived, he marched up to his prey's room and kicked the door down. Everyone in the room was startled at the scarred criminal's entrance. Poindexter was eating dinner with his wife and 2 daughters. Dabi didn't particularly care. Oh my god, the oldest daughter cried out. Mommy, he's scary, why is he here? The younger one said. Don't worry, sweethearts, everything will be all right. Benjamin said to both of his daughters. Who the hell are you? Who the hell do you think you are? His wife screamed as she grabbed a knife and assumed a fighting stance fitting of a soldier. Turns out Benjamin Poindexter was in Japan because his wife was stationed there. Dabi looked at the family with apathy. It's simple, your husband shot up a cafe. My girlfriend was severely injured. I intend to return the favor 1,000-fold. A look of realization crosses Benjamin's face, while his wife refused to believe the scarred man and rushed forward to attack him. Her attacks were all in vain, however, as Dabi dodged or parried each and every one of them with minimal effort. The soldier backed up and the entire family had a look of shock. How? Mom's world-class knife fighter and a special forces soldier. How can he beat her? You know, I've always found the term world-class to be misleading. After all, not everyone makes their skills known to the public. Now, Poindexter, judging by your facade as a doting family man, my husband isn't acting. I'm going to assume that you aren't a crazed gunman. Instead, I'm going to assume that someone hired you. Dabi said as blue flames flickered off of him. So, tell me who hired you and I'll make your death painless. The more you refuse to answer me, the more painful it'll be. I don't know what you're talking about. Dabi rushed towards him and kicked him in the chest. The man's daughter screamed while his wife tried to stab her husband's attacker. Dabi dodged and sent her flying into the refrigerator. Each time the man feigned innocence, Dabi would kick him and deflect retaliation from his wife. Eventually his wife spoke up. It wasn't him. It was me. I shot your girlfriend. Her family looked at her with surprise. What's your name? Melissa Poindexter. Tell me, Melissa, what's the name of the cafe we were at? Melissa looked shocked while the rest of the family looked confused. After all, any hired gun worth their salt would remember their target the day they carried out the hit. Right. The soldier sputtered in an attempt to reply before she screamed as her knife hand was burnt to a crisp. Please stop. Yes, I did it. The ones who hired me were a gang called the Saints. They promised to put my daughters through college. The man's family looked at him in shock, while Dabi looked at him with apathy. Dabi then roasted the man's wife, earning screams of rage from her family. Mommy, you son of a beach. WHYYY. I told you what you wanted to know. You made me wait too long. I told you the longer you wait, the more painful your death will be. My death, you said. Not hers. There is more than one kind of pain. For example, even though I wasn't shot, watching the girl I loved fall to the ground hurt far more than all of these scars put together. Like I said, I was repaying what you did 1,000 times over. You sick F. The man's eldest daughter screamed. One would think she would be ended next. Instead, Dabi ended the youngest one. This elicited more screams and caused the remaining daughter to run at him with a knife. This obviously resulted in the girl's death. Benjamin broke down crying as Dabi walked up to him. Any last words? The man could only cry, incapable of forming any coherent words. Very well, Dabi said as he burned the shooter alive just as he did the man's family. He walked out of the apartment complex and roasted any police who got in his way as he called calculator. I need you to find me the location of a gang called the Saints. You got it, Dabi? I'll have it ready for you in a few keystrokes. I appreciate it. Right as Dabi got to the car, Izuku left him. Directions were plugged into the GPS by calculator. Dabi wasted no time in taking off. The Saints, much like the Midorya family, operated out of a warehouse, so Dabi sent the car through the warehouse door. He walked in right after. You son of a beach. Do you know who we are? A random gangster yelled out. Instead of responding, Dabi proceeded to incinerate every single member there. The screams could be heard for miles as he burnt the gangsters and their warehouse to the ground. No matter how much the gangsters prayed, no assistance would come. Calculator made sure of that by making sure everyone knew what the Saints did. Once he was finished, Dabi returned to Doc Q's and saw that Toga was awake and all patched up and talking to the other executives. Hey Dabi, how are you? The girl said with her usual grin. Dabi just walked up to her with an unreadable expression. Dabi, you're not allowed to get shot ever again, the blue flame user said as he hugged her tightly. She hugged him back and hummed her agreement into his shoulder. This isn't the most romantic place in the world, but F it, Dabi said as he got on one knee. Despite the fact that you're an excitable, bloodthirsty psychopath, you've always been there for me. You've probably been there for me more than anyone excluding Izuku and Shadow. You've loved me and cared for me even when I didn't deserve it from you, and I appreciate you every day because of it. Himiko Toga, will you marry me? Tears welled up in Himiko's eyes more and more as she listened to Dabi's speech. Everyone else had growing smiles as they knew what was coming before it even occurred. When Dabi popped the question, Himiko finally cried and glomped her very recent fiancé while screaming the word yes. Everyone congratulated the two and everyone hugged the two when they got a chance. Daz wished his boss the best and immediately pledged himself as a second lieutenant to Dabi. Izuku and Shadow both wished their brother the best and gave Toga the classic overprotective brother routine. Everyone laughed because they knew the two brothers wouldn't carry out their very fake threats. Well, I'm technically a registered minister, so you two want to tie the knot right now, Doc Q said. The newly engaged, soon-to-be married couple nodded excitedly. Very well, Dabi Midorya. Himiko Toga, I get the feeling you two don't give much of a shit about vows considering one of you ended a gang and an entire family for the other, so I'll cut right to the chase. I now pronounce you man and wife. You may now kiss the bride. The two kissed and everyone cheered at the first marriage of the family. Izuku had a fair amount to deal with as of late. He had to monitor his information network to keep an eye on several important people. Bakugo dropped off the map for a couple weeks after he dropped out of Shitsu. He couldn't stay hidden for long, however, as Izuku discovered that he had joined Knuckleduster, Popstep, and Crawler as a vigilante. Under Knuckleduster's tutelage, he surpassed the skill level of his former classmates relatively quickly. He could probably win against most second and third years at UA. Except for the big three, of course. Speaking of vigilantes, Bakugo isn't the only new vigilante. An ex-cop, Kimura Autorabashi, became a vigilante known as Smoker. It's quite fitting considering he is the user of the Loja-type Plume fruit. Due to being a Loja, most criminals and heroes don't stand a chance. The family is keeping an eye on him so that if he becomes too problematic, he can be dealt with. In terms of heroes, the big three are steadily improving even faster than they already were. Mirio had already achieved control over 66% of One for All. It wouldn't surprise Izuku if he achieved 100% in the next month or so. That combined with his phasing quirk would be quite tough to beat, assuming armament didn't work on the intangibility. Hato and Amajiki both tried their damnedest to keep up and were succeeding relatively well. The only hero from the Camino incident still out of commission was Mount Lady, but she was awake and would be let out of the hospital in 6 months. Izuku also had to keep an eye on Ragdoll to make sure she didn't strike out against her former teammates before it was time. Compress was keeping her calm, but it wasn't hard to tell that she was getting a little antsy. She really wanted her revenge, however her disappearance resulted in the Pussycats being accompanied by the likes of Edshot, Gang Orca, and Ryukyu. Although Izuku may just send some of the other executives to deal with the heroic bodyguards. Yeah, he'd do that. Tomoko, what's up boss? Take Ibara, Nito, and Compress to deal with your ex-teammates' bodyguards. Your revenge happens today. Really? Thanks bossman, you're the best. Of course I am. Now give him hell. I won't tolerate anything less. Tomoko then nodded and grabbed her suit jacket and left to get her new teammates. She now wears a black slim-fit business suit with the sleeves rolled up, a black sleeveless button-down shirt, and a white necktie. All of her accomplices were downstairs from Izuku's monitoring station. Babe, Ivy, Larceny, we're going cat hunting. But they have not wronged us as they have you. So why are we coming? You guys are dealing with their bodyguards, Ivy. The kittens are all mine. Who gets who, my beloved queen? Larceny gets Ryukyu. Ivy gets Edshot. You get another round with Gang Orca. Everyone agreed with their matchups and the crew set out on their cat hunt. It didn't take much to find them, honestly. All it took was a staged rescue emergency. And there they were, ready to boost their ratings. Everything was going great. The heroes were rescuing the victims, innocents were saved, and praise was showered on the heroes. That is until Tomoko jumped in and threw a push kick towards Tiger, who blocked it but was sent a distance away. The 3 bodyguard heroes were about to rush in until they themselves were interrupted. Hey there, Dragon Lady. Let's dance, shall we? Nito said as he poked her cheek, thus copying her quirk. You will find that I will not be an easy opponent, executive. The stoic heroine stated. It is God's will that I impede your efforts today, Edshot. I hope you do not take any offense. And it is the will of the justice system that I bring you in. I hope that you will comply, executive of the Midorya family. Ready for round 2, Gang Orca. Things will be quite different this time, Mr. Compress. Tomoko, why are you doing this? Tiger asked. Why did you become a villain, Tomoko? We were sisters, cried Pixie Bob. You were like an Aunt Dakota, how could you leave him like that? Mandalay stated. Yea, some sisters you 3 were. Looked for me for a week before scrambling for more fame. Besides Mandalay, Koda actually encouraged me to leave because he knew the family cared for me more than you 3. Tomoko stated nonchalantly. The hero team looked distraught at their sister's carefree attitude about the situation. The first one to recover was Tiger. Very well, Tomoko. It seems that you are now our enemy. I must remind you that you were never able to beat me in combat training. Maybe then I'll be able to knock some sense into you, he said while assuming a fighting stance. Tiger, Mandalay cried. You're really going to fight her? Pixie Bob exclaimed. It was then that Tomoko assumed her hybrid form and took up her own stance. I hate to break it to you, Tiger, but I'm far stronger than I was before. You 3 will have your work cut out for you if you plan to take me out. And with that, every executive clashed with their respective opponents. Larceny and Ryukyu both assumed their dragon forms and began clawing and biting at one another. Poison Ivy did her best to capture Edshot, while the ninja hero attempted the same. Gang Orca and Compress both engaged in close combat, with Compress using observation to avoid the number 11 hero's shockwaves. Tomoko used her superior observation to avoid Pixie Bob's attacks while engaging Mandalay and Tiger in close combat, easily overpowering both of them. Ibara POV. Edshot was not the number 4 hero for nothing. He was quite capable of avoiding my vines using his quirk. While I was normally a stationary fighter, he kept me on my toes despite my skill in hacking. I hadn't quite mastered it like my senior compatriots. But I was not an amateur either. I praise your skill, ninja hero. Lesser heroes would have fallen by now, yet you still stand and fight. It does me great honor to call you an opponent. I can say the same of you, villain. Not many villains can last as long against me as you have. I acknowledge your skill. Tell me, what is your name, executive of the Midorya family? My name is not important. You may call me Poison Ivy. Very well. Now I shall bring you to justice. Nito POV. Yeesh, she ain't number 10 for nothing. This dragon quirk is quite strong. Luckily, we're constantly making contact so I can keep my own quirk going. My, you certainly live up to the hype as the number 10 hero, Ms. Ryukyu. Do you expect me to be flattered, villain? Now that's just rude. Here I am trying to show courtesy towards an opponent and you're just throwing it out the window. You hero types are so arrogant. State your name, villain. That way I may know the name of the boy I shall defeat. My name ain't important. You can call me Larceny. A fitting name for a mere quirk thief. Oh, so that's how it is. This beach is so getting it. She doesn't know a damn thing. She doesn't understand how hard I worked and how hard I've come. Well, I guess I'll have to show her. So I transformed back into my human form and coated my arms and legs in haki. Why would you become human again, thief? That just gives me the advantage. I cut her off with a haki punch to her giant jaw. My armament might not be as strong as my senior executives, but it's strong enough to prove my hard work. Why would I give you an advantage? Don't make me laugh. I earn my strength and my position as an executive through my own hard work and effort. I refuse to let someone like you, who is gifted with a powerful, flashy, attention-stealing quirk, look down on that. I'll show you how strong my will is with my own 2 hands. It seems I underestimated you, boy. It will not happen again. It already has. And with that, the duel between dragons became the age-old battle of human versus dragon. Compress POV. My, you've improved since our last battle, gang. How could I not compress? You defeated me with ease. The only way I could regain my honor as a hero was to improve. If that's your mentality, then your honor was never lost. Let us continue our bout, gang. Orca. I would have it no other way, Mr. Compress. And with that, our fists met. His orca fist against my haki-coated fist. I decided that this man was a worthy opponent. I would not toy with him as I did last time, for this man was strong. If hero rankings were done based on strength, then he would be far higher than he currently is, for he was not only physically strong, he was strong mentally, and his will would make his potential haki even stronger than it would normally be. This is a man that I can consider a rival, and I will show him the respect that fits such a standing. We matched each other blow for blow, punch for punch, kick for kick, shockwave for armament. Tomoko POV. Yeesh, who knew proper training could strengthen me this much? I'd finally gotten the hang of my transformations, and my armament rate was 100%. My observation advanced to the point that I could even see a couple seconds into the future. I don't even think Atsu's gotten that good yet. My armament is a bit weaker than everyone else's, but it works. After kicking away Mandalay and Tiger, I rushed forward and tore off one of Pixie Bob's arms before kicking her into a tree. Next, I rushed towards Mandalay and punched her in the head repeatedly until I dodged a claw strike from Tiger. Mandalay was long since unconscious at this point, and Pixie Bob was most likely going to die from blood loss, seeing as they didn't have a speedster with them. Tiger and I yelled at each other before charging towards one another. Once we split, I had a couple scratches on my cheek while he was covered in lacerations of varying depth. I rushed towards him again and crushed his right kneecap beyond repair before slashing his throat. I walked towards Pixie Bob and tore out her heart. Mandalay would be the one to suffer survivor's guilt. General POV. Tomoko appeared to let her accomplices know the deed was done. Nito walked away from Ryukyu's unconscious form. Ibara had Ed shot unconscious and tied to a tree. Compress tipped his hat to his downed opponent and left his broken mask fragments near his dominant hand. Each executive defeats their opponents, although Nito and Compress were covered with bruises and blood for different reasons. Nito for not using Ryukyu's dragon form, and Compress for fighting seriously against Gang Orca. Once they got home, both couples involved with the mission went to their respective rooms to cuddle and sleep the rest of the day away. In other news, the funerals for the pro heroes Pixie Bob and Tiger will take place on the 25th of next month, to allow Mandalay to recover from her injuries and attend. It's been 3 weeks since Tomoko's revenge against her ex-team. Mandalay was left with brain damage that made it impossible to use her quirk without dealing with excruciating pain. The former pro was also diagnosed with severe PTSD and an irrational fear of cats, primarily leopards. On top of that, the pro heroes tasked with guarding the hero team also came under fire. They were accused of saving their own skin by letting the wild pussycats die. Each hero had their own response to the accusation. Ed shot, we were attacked by a team, 3 villains for 3 guards, and then former pro hero Ragdoll went after the remainder of the pussycats. My particular opponent, Poison Ivy, was quite skilled and was able to defeat me. The reason she did not end me is a mystery that I have admittedly lost sleep over. Ryukyu, my opponent, caught me off guard. Such cheap tactics will not work a second time. The reason I was spared is unknown to me, but it will be the boy's undoing. Ryukyu's response infuriated Nito, who had beaten her in one-on-one combat using only his haki and his combat prowess. He ranted and raved for several hours, until Ibara returned and was able to calm him down. Gang Orca, my opponent, Mr. Compress, was able to best me in combat fair and square. I believe the reason that he left me alive is that he sees me as a rival of sorts due to our conflict during the Camino incident. Compress grinned under his mask at Gang Orca's recognition of his motives. Nito promised to end Ryukyu the next time they fought, and Ibara was relatively indifferent on the subject. Squeals of delight soon brought smiles to everyone's faces. The reason for this, you ask? Izuku was playing with Eri. The young girl liked everyone in the family, but playing with the infamous Joker was her favorite pastime. Momo came as a close second. The primary hypothesis is that the boss and his girlfriend had the most versatile abilities, combined with their intelligence, and Eri had a nigh unlimited amount of possibilities for playtime. Right now Eri was playing and dancing with a string-made copy of herself. That's right, folks, Izuku could create string clones now. But what about the others, you ask? The heroes and the vigilantes. What are they doing? Without the League of Villains obsessively going after All Might, the remainder of Class 1 that continued to study the ins and outs of heroism had a relatively uneventful time in whichever school they transferred to. Most went to Shikzu, but others chose different schools like Ketsubutsu Academy. The ones who stopped trying to be heroes led especially uneventful lives. Ada had his legs amputated about a little less than a month ago and was attending a regular private school. The reason for this is that he was actually blacklisted from anything related to heroics. He couldn't even work in the support industry. Instead, he's opting to save people a different way, through medicine. He is one of the 2 members of UA's first-year heroics class that hasn't kept in contact with the others. His part in Fumikage Takoyami's death ensured that not even Uraraka was speaking with him anymore. The boy was now an even bigger workaholic than before, and would likely be an alcoholic in the future as well. The other member of Class 1 that didn't keep in contact with the others was Katsuki Bakugo, now known as the Vigilante Fragger. His name is based off of the drag grenade design on his old hero costume. His skill combined with his quirk now allowed him to keep up with pro-level fighters including Nejire Hado and Tamaki Amajiki. He wasn't quite at the level of Mirio Tagata, but given enough time he could likely reach that level. That is assuming he was given enough time. Izuku hasn't forgotten about him and he hasn't forgotten about Izuku. The only thing preventing him from hunting down the infamous crime lord was the lack of information related to him. Katsuki could only really wait for him to show up and hope that he can get a shot in at him. The vigilante group led by Knuckleduster was still focusing on trigger users and dealers. Izuku, when not playing with Uri or enjoying time with Momo, was expanding his field of influence. For the most part, he had gangs and other criminal organizations under his thumb. Gangs, like the Mutants, which, as the name implied, was comprised solely of mutation-type quirk users, and organizations like the Gifters who dealt in drug deals and prostitution. He had a hand in every criminal industry possible. Drugs, prostitution, contract ending, abductions, you name it, he was involved. Now how could he possibly expand his influence even more, you ask? The answer is quite simple. Izuku Joker Midorya now had a hand in politics. He's bought out several politicians from councilors and representatives to Supreme Court justices and members of the Prime Minister's cabinet. But the wealth he's accrued and the fearsome reputation he's gained over the years, it wasn't really too hard. Izuku's also gained several members of the police force under his influence as well, from beat cops to detectives. He's currently working with several criminal chemists to improve upon the effects of trigger while minimizing the drawbacks and tells that come with using the quirk steroid. Now why does he need all of these drug improvements and influence expansions, you ask? It's quite simple. He's planning to reshape society itself. By controlling politics, he can make it harder for heroes to do their work. By controlling the police force, he can falsify or outright get rid of incriminating evidence. And by improving trigger, he can enhance the combat abilities of other gangs and solo criminals for when he makes his big move against heroes. A move so big that the hero-worshipping society everyone knows will be shaken to its very core and toppled to the ground. And Izuku will rise from the rubble as the man that will set Japan back on track. Izuku's endgame isn't just the acquisition of power and the restructuring of society. Izuku's endgame is to be king. Katsuki was more than just a little upset. It didn't matter who he asked, threatened, or attempted to coerce into getting information on Joker because no one would talk. Everyone was either paid off or too scared to rat on the crime lord, and it infuriated the explosive vigilante. What infuriated him the most, however, was that he could understand the fear people felt. He could understand why someone wouldn't want to rat out Izuku, and it pissed him off to no end. It seemed things were going to be looking up, however, as Katsuki saw a familiar half and half mop of hair along with a young girl with silver hair. Katsuki POV. Half and half, you son of a beach. Where's Deku? Katsuki Bakugo, my least favorite person in the world. Why would I tell you where Izuku is? If you won't tell me voluntarily, then I'll just make you. I sincerely doubt that. Harry, stay behind me, he said as I rushed towards him. The prick created an ice wall that I promptly turned into steam. Unfortunately for me, he seemed capable of dodging or countering every single attack I threw at him. I stopped for 1 second and locked eyes with the kid he was protecting. Kid, get out of here, my business isn't with you. Half and half seemed shocked by my statement, and his expression softened as he ushered her out of the way of our battle. Your ability to dodge is more than just reflexes. That much is plain to see. So what is it? It doesn't really matter. I would have no problem with telling you, since knowing still wouldn't make you a threat to Izuku. But he wants to keep that knowledge restricted to the family. Of course he does, I said as I launched a gauntlet blast towards him. Unfortunately, he countered it with a glacier which kept us at a stalemate. Todoroki POV. His quirk is strong enough to keep up with mine, I'll give him that. He could definitely reach executive level if he isn't there already. Unfortunately for him, no one's going to teach him haki, so we'll always have an advantage. We met each other blow for blow in our quirk clash until an old lady who lived in the neighborhood called out to me. Todoroki, what's going on? Who is this youngster? Mrs. Takashi, it isn't safe here, please go. Oh shit, I said as an explosion was directed her way. I dove in and took the hit for her just in time. Once the smoke cleared, I saw Bakugo look shocked at what had just occurred before looking down in shame and retreating. Are you all right, Mrs. Takashi? Am I all right? I should be asking you that, young man. That was incredibly reckless of you. I apologize, ma'am, but I'm more capable to taking a hit like that than you are. That's fair, but still reckless. You and your group have done wonders for this neighborhood, so don't make a habit of putting your life at risk. Regardless of what the media says, you people are the real heroes here. I appreciate the praise, ma'am. Would you like Eri and I to walk you home? Oh, that's not necessary. You just get home and get some rest. And I mean real rest. Eri will tell me if you don't. Won't you, Eri? Of course, Mrs. Takashi. Eri giggled. I smiled softly and complied as we parted ways. Being a hero wasn't so bad every now and then. I was hesitant about Izuku's decision to send the different factions of the family to straighten out certain neighborhoods. But it seems like everything is going according to plan. Flashback. You want us to what? Come on, Dabi, I know you aren't hard of hearing. I want each of you to take your factions to different areas of Japan and help them out a little bit. Joker, I haven't questioned you since before Ibara and I joined. But why would villains do something like that? Simple, Nito. Because we aren't going to be villains forever. This statement shocked every executive and lieutenant, including Momo, who thought she had her boyfriend figured out. I suppose everyone should be introduced first. Izuku, of course, was there, as was every executive and their lieutenants. Toru was present with her newly chosen lieutenant Absalom. Compress was with Transporter. Himeko was with Daz. Dabi was there with his lieutenant, a magma quirk user named Sakazuki. Shouto had his lieutenant, a snow quirk user known as Aokiji. Nito had an expert thief named Ban as his lieutenant. Ibara had an American plant user named Pamela. Tomoko had a werewolf quirk user named Jabra, and Momo had a quirkless swordsman who went by the name Hawkeyes. You see, my goal is to utterly destroy the unjust hero worship that society has built up, and what better way to do that than to make the heroes and vigilantes look like villains? It was at that moment that every executive understood Izuku's plan. I see. I can't believe I didn't get it before. Helping the public will counteract the media's negative representation of us. Momo started, which will increase the turnout rate for legislations that restrict heroes and benefit us. Nito continued with a manic grin. And by manipulating the flow of battle to put standard civilians in danger. Ibara said with a small smirk adorning her lips, and then protecting them from that danger. Tomoko said with a wide smile, we'll turn the hero's greatest asset against them. All the executives said simultaneously. Flashback end. Todoroki POV. I still can't get over how much of a genius that guy is. I said to myself with a small smirk. Come on, Uncle Shouto. You heard Mrs. Takashi, you need to rest and relax. I, Eri Midorya, daughter of the great Izuku and beautiful Momo, shall take the challenge of conquering the battlefield that is the kitchen tonight, Eri said, borrowing her adopted father's flair for being dramatic. With Uncle Kyuzen's supervision, of course, she added sheepishly. All right, Eri. I shall do as the princess commands, I said with a small chuckle. It really is amazing how much this kid has wormed her way into all of our hearts. General POV. It's been 3 months since Izuku announced his newest plan to his executives, and boy has it worked wonders. Hero approval ratings have dropped substantially. Several legislations have passed making the hero's job significantly more difficult, and the public gave their support to the Midoriya family. On top of that, new rivalries have been forged and pre-existing rivalries continued and advanced. Compress's rivalry with Gang Orca was taken to the next level when the pro subconsciously awakened his hack. Once he realized he had his newfound abilities, Gang Orca spent his free time training them and made for a more difficult opponent each time he battled the criminal showman. Ibara's rivalry with Edshot has been stuck in a continuous stalemate, with each one being incapable of defeating the other. Edshot gained observation haki along with Eraserhead under the tutelage of Gang Orca, which allowed him to keep up with the Vine Quirk user. Tomoko built up a rivalry with Maruko due to them both having abilities that enhanced their physical capabilities. For whatever odd reason, however, Maruko refused to learn haki, but had more than enough physical strength to make up for it. Dabi gained a rival in the form of one Nejire Hado. Due to them both using a form of energy in combat, they were able to keep each other on their toes. Nejire even chose to intern under Best Genus due to the Fibermaster's rivalry with Toga, often pitting him against Dabi as well. Shouto maintained his rivalry with Katsuki Bakugo. Granted, he came out on top more often than not. Having a dual-element quirk and haki gave him a significant advantage after all. Bakugo learned to slightly even the playing field with cunning and equipment over time. Nito started a new rivalry with Tamaki Amajiki after completely discrediting Ryukyu as a hero in public. During one of their battles, not only did Nito defend civilians from what they perceived as the dragon heroine's attacks, but he also defeated her using haki and nothing else. She was found dead in her apartment several days later from suicide. Toru gained a rivalry with an observation using snipe. This was due to his observation allowing him to use his homing quirk despite her invisibility. Granted, she countered his bullets with armament. Momo primarily battled Eraserhead due to her having the best hand-to-hand skills out of all the executives. She also kept weapons and tools on her person so she could fight even if her quirk was erased. Combined with the observation haki he learned on his own, Eraserhead was a worthy opponent for Izuku's girlfriend. Izuku had a rival in the successor of One for All, Mirio Tagata. This rivalry was a given due to Mirio being the biggest obstacle in Izuku's plans, and since Mirio wanted revenge for All Might. In fact, they're currently engaged in battle right now. Izuku POV. I blocked a Detroit smash with a wall of haki-infused strings. Yeesh, someone woke up on the wrong side of the bed this morning. My little quip caused Mirio, or rather the pro-hero Lemillion, to scowl. Give up, Joker. Today's the day I'm bringing you in. You say that every time you see me. Literally every damn time. And you haven't beaten me yet, I said with a smirk. Mirio gave his own smirk. The key word in that statement is yet, Joker. I heard footsteps before I heard Tomoko call out to me, Joker. Watch out. I immediately proceeded to dodge a kick from Maruko. Ha, not bad, kid, I'll give you that. You would have made a great hero. Too bad for you, you made the wrong choice. Sorry, I have a girlfriend, I said before using my strings to launch Tomoko, who had switched into her hybrid form at the rabbit hero. WW what? And wasn't she started to say before blocking a punch from Tomoko, while blushing heavily. Tomoko picked up on my little gag and said, woo, Maruko, hitting on a kid who's already taken. And you call us villains? That's it, Ragdoll. I swear I'm gonna kick you into the ground if it's the last thing I do. Tomoko gave a fang-filled grin. Didn't you know? Leopards eat rabbits, she said as the two women rushed at each other. Woo, cat fight, I said as I dodged another one of Mirio's attacks, while using my strings to move a civilian out of harm's way. Yeesh, property damage is one thing, but civilians are another. You really should hold back when you're fighting. I don't need a lecture on heroics from a villain like you, the hero said indignantly. Clearly you do, seeing as I have to do your job for you, I said as I launched several bullet strings at All Might's successor. Tomoko POV. Punch for punch, kick for kick. Even without armament, Maruko can match me in terms of physical force. Unfortunately for her, I can see the future. A little bit anyway. Ragdoll, I never got the full story from Mandalay. What happened? What made you become a villain? The rabbit hero asked me with an unusually somber expression. I sighed before explaining myself. They abandoned me. Mandalay, Pixie Bob, and Tiger all abandoned me. We were supposed to be a team. We were supposed to be sisters, and they abandoned me in favor of their fame. Joker and Atsu gave me a family, a real family, and I can never thank them enough for that. Even when I struggled with my new abilities, their faith and love for me never faltered. Not once. That's why I'm a villain, and that is why I fight. So I can at least somewhat repay them for what they did for me. For what it's worth, I'm sorry. I'm sorry that you had to go through that. But I can't let you do what you want. It's my duty as a hero to take you down. I gave her a soft smile that caught her off guard. Thank you, Rumi. I can't think of a better person to be my rival, I said as my smile became ferocious once more. Now, show me what you've got, rabbit hero Maruko. You aren't done yet, are you? She matched me with a smirk of her own. I ain't done yet. Not by a long shot, Ragdoll. And with that we clashed once more, releasing a large shockwave that decimated the street we were on. General POV. Both battles continued on for 10 more minutes before the cavalry arrived. Momo and Compress both used flashbangs to distract the heroes, and which allowed their lovers to escape. The heroes once again suffered defeat, and their approval ratings once again dropped substantially. The time was growing closer for the villains to truly take the stage. Izuku POV. My. The heroes are struggling more than expected, Compress said. Yeah, but they're getting more reckless when they should be even more careful than usual, Dabi pointed out. Hey, when can we start ending them? Toga asked impatiently. The time is growing closer. We must be patient, and we shall know when the time is right, Ibara responded. I'm in no rush, Shouto said stoically. All you should be more excited, Hafsi. Joker's gonna be king after all, Toru excitedly stated. I can see where he's coming from though. It's kinda sad to think that our rivals won't be around forever, Tomoko said whilst filing her nails. I for one am glad Ryukyu is dead, Nito interjected. Yes, we all know how much you hate her, Nito. Momo sighed. Hey Momo, do you and Toru ever wonder how the kids from your class are doing? Ibara, the question is posed to you and Nito too. I've kept tabs on a couple. Mina's been working hard to be a good hero, no doubt since her best friend was a villain. Ajiro's doing alright. He works part-time as an instructor for a dojo, Toru said. I get curious about Gyro on occasion, but never curious enough to check on her, Momo mumbled, still peeved at the rocker for putting her relationship with Izuku in question even if it was for a moment. Nito and I have not checked on our compatriots. They are of no consequence now, Ibara stated as Nito nodded in agreement. It was at that moment I got a text. Once I read it, my smirk widened. Manual, Death Arms, Uabami, Serious. Ish Stain and that new kid of his have been busy. Oh, that's Spinner. The lizard guy, right? Toga said excitedly. Bingo. Well. The time is growing ever closer, boys and girls. The promised day is fast approaching. You'll remember the plan. Get the heroes' attention, aggravate them into wreaking havoc, save civilians along the way, then end them. Dabi said. And while that's going on, our government insiders will continue paving the way for you to be king. Hit the nail on the head, Dabi. I can't wait, I said with a wide smile. It wasn't just one city. The entirety of Japan was in chaos. Explosions echoed across the entire country. Buildings were toppled, infrastructure was destroyed, and the citizens were cowering in fear. It wasn't a fear of villains, however. They were afraid of the heroes. The promised day had arrived, and the first phase of Izuku's plan was a resounding success. Let's see how all of this came to pass now, shall we? Shadow POV. It wasn't too hard to catch the attention of Katsuki Bakugo. With our extensive information network, it was easy to determine where he would be. With my hair as noticeable as it is, all I had to do was walk past him to set him off. You son of a beach, stop running. The explosive vigilante yelled as he let off another explosion. Little did he know I had Aikichi and the others under my command ushering scared civilians out of the line of fire. They also let every one of them know that they worked for me and by extension the family. That way the civilians knew that we criminals were the ones saving them. Sorry, I don't have time to waste fighting you, I said, knowing that it would set him off even more. With that one statement, his explosions got even bigger than they were before, causing more damage and frightening more citizens. I'm glad Izuku entrusted him to me, knowing that he's not even worth the time of day to Deku is the ultimate insult. Compress POV. I sent Transporter into Gang Orca's agency to issue my challenge, so it didn't take too long before the Haki-using pro confronted me. He is a man of honor after all. Mr. Compress, he stated simply. Gang Orca, fancy meeting you here, I said with a flamboyant bow. Funny considering you sent an underling to relay your challenge, the pro said with barely noticeable irritation in his voice. Ah yes, Transporter is such a diligent worker. I truly am grateful that he follows me, I said as I dodged a Haki-infused punch that took down the wall that was behind me. If I didn't know any better, I'd say you were upset, gang. I would like to think we have enough respect for one another to issue challenges in person. I apologize for not wanting to walk into a hero agency all on my lonesome. I like my freedom, and taking on a whole agency is a bit much even for me, I said, knowing that Gang knew enough about Haki to see through my lie. Who do you think you're fooling, Compress? This power that you've had and that I've awakened is more than enough to get you through my agency. Not to mention your quirk would make it especially easy, said the Orsinus user as he grew progressively more irritated. Haki can only get one so far, Gang. Now why don't we just, I started to say before being interrupted by a Haki-infused sound wave that destroyed yet another wall after I dodged it. Now that's just rude. Enough of these games, Compress, he bellowed as he resumed his attack. Thank goodness Transporter is so good at his job. Gang is completely unaware of the civilians he's frightening. Exactly as planned. Dabi POV. It's really convenient that Best Jeanist is a stickler for the rules and schedule keeping. It makes our job that much easier. Walk hand in hand with my psychotic wife down a certain street, at a certain time, and Izuku's plan gets put into motion. Stop right there, villains. It's time for you to be brought in for your crimes, the Fiber Master shouted. Yeesh, I didn't know going on an afternoon stroll with my wife was a crime, I said loudly enough for nearby civilians to hear. The whispers spread like wildfire. Don't play coy, Dabi. You know what you've done, stated Nejire. It's odd to not hear her ask questions, but considering how much trouble I've given her, I shouldn't be too surprised. You mean doing your job for you, and no saving the people you're supposed to protect. And you call us the villains, Toga said, which riled them up even further. Daz, Sakazuki, get everyone else out of here. These so-called heroes are apparently upset and we all know how that ends up, I said to the two lieutenants. We won't let Yo Best Jeanist started before Toga interrupted. Won't let us do what? Save the people. Do your job. What exactly are you trying to stop, Genie Boy? God, I love that woman. A sentiment I'm starting to extend to these civilians, seeing how they're cheering us on and booing the two pros in front of us. I created a wall of fire to block the shockwave Nejire launched at me. Wow, way to ruin my internal monologue. And you call us the evil ones, I said before launching a fireball that was big enough to hurt her, small enough to avoid major property damage. Himiko, be a dear and take Mr. Genus somewhere else. He'll only get in my way. You got it, babe, she said with a kiss on my cheek, as she rushed towards Best Jeanist and steered her fight away from mine. Now then, let's get this routine song and dance started, Nejire Hato, I said as we both launched waves of our respective energy at one another. Tomoko POV. Maruko and I were quite similar to that old American cartoon Tom and Jerry. We just attacked each other on sight. Not because we hate each other, but because we love fighting each other to the point where nothing else matters in that moment. Izuku was right, this carnivorous Zoan makes me a lot more bloodthirsty. Thankfully, Jabra is good at directing our faction to evacuate the civilians. Nito POV. I can see why Tamaki Amajiki was considered one of UA's big three. His attacks are precise enough to keep property damage at a minimum, while still packing a heavy punch. If it weren't for Ban's telekinetic abilities, I'm not sure we would have been able to turn the public against him. What's this? I thought heroes were supposed to be better than villains. So why is it that my crew and I are saving people from you? Answer me that, hero. I ranted at him. He just sharply exhaled and attacked me once more. He's quite soft-spoken, but that works in my favor since he doesn't try and refute anything I say. Not even trying to defend against my accusations. That's the same thing as pleading guilty, I said as I hit him in the chest with a haki-infused fist. My success didn't last long, however, since I had to dodge a spiraling fist and a trash can thrown my way. Senkaibara and Ryuko Yanagi. To what do I owe the unexpected pleasure? We're here to help you, Monoma, said Kaibara. I'm already not liking this. You may have become a villain, but we believe you can be saved. Yanagi stated. I'm definitely not liking this. Alright, I'm gonna stop you right there. I wasn't forced or coerced into joining the family. This was the choice that I made. Whether or not you like it is none of my concern, I said. But this only seemed to make them even more determined. How troublesome. Ibara POV. I was wondering when you would show up, Edshot, I said as I was sitting cross-legged on a building rooftop. I've been taking lessons in being dramatic from Joker, so putting it into practice on the promised day seems fitting. Poison Ivy. I've heard that the other members of your family have been moving out as well. What exactly are you planning? The ninja hero asked. We are planning to do God's work, nothing more, I said with my back still facing him. I coded my index finger in armament as signal to Pamela to start preparations for civilian evacuation. If you think the decrease in hero approval ratings is going to discourage us, you are sorely mistaken. If anything, it will pressure us to do better, he said, slipping into a fighting stance. Yes, do try and do better. Having to do your job for you is quite taxing, I snarked as my middle finger was coded, signaling that preparations should be finished and everyone should be ready to act. Edshot attacked with a haki-imbued kick, which I promptly dodged as Pamela and the others working under me focused on moving the civilians to safety. I retaliated by coding 3 vines in haki and attacking him from different angles. The ninja hero used his quirk to dodge and counterattacked with a haki-infused punch, which I blocked with my vines. Was the truth really that hard to bear? If you lot fail to protect the citizens, then someone must do it for you. We just so happen to succeed where you fail. I could tell that he was more irritated than he cared to admit. He clearly wanted to refute me despite being incapable of doing so. Before he could attack once more, I used my vines to redirect an enlarged bolt thrown my way. Using observation, I dodged an iron fist that would have connected with my spine had I not moved. This is certainly a surprise. How have you two been? I said with a small smile. I may be a villain, but that doesn't mean I should lack manners after all. I've been better. I would be much better if I didn't have to fight you. Yui Kodai said softly. I'd be a whole lot better if you were one of our classmates rather than a villain, Shizaki. Tetsu said with an unusually somber tone. I'm sorry to say I'm quite content where I am at. Joker is a man chosen by God and it is my duty to do God's work, I stated. How can you say that? He manipulated Takoyami and lead him to his death, the Iron Quirk user shouted. Not to mention he crippled a student at the USJ and put All Might in the hospital indefinitely. Kodai interjected. Fumicage's death was the result of him being blinded by vengeance. As for Katsuki Bakugo, he was responsible for Joker becoming who he is now. All Might challenged a man of God and lost, and he has suffered the consequences. I could see Tetsu shaking with rage. Talking will not persuade me. If that was all you wished to say, then leave. You have no business here. Both of them remained steadfast. I must commend their will. To stay put despite facing an opponent out of their league takes tremendous courage. I will not let their courage go to waste. Toru POV. Snipe Sensei. I called out in the cutest voice I could muster. How have you been? I said before dodging a bullet. How rude. I don't make a habit of going easy on villains, Hagakure, even if they are a former student of mine. The gun-wielding hero said. I'd be disappointed if you did, I said as I threw 2 knives which he promptly shot out of the air. It did give me enough time to get in close and start launching attacks at him. If our informants are to be believed, he only has observation haki, which makes close quarters combat more advantageous for me. If only you put in this much effort into your school work, the cowboy-themed hero said nostalgically. A school never was my thing, I retorted before jumping back to avoid a pool of acid that was thrown my way. I dodged to the side to avoid a downward punch from some very recognizable arms. Didn't mommy and daddy teach you too that it's rude to interrupt someone else's conversation? This seemed to set Mina off just a little bit. I don't want to hear any talk about manners from a traitor like you. she snapped as she slipped into a fighting stance with Mizo following suit. This might be fun. Momo POV. How have you been, Eraserhead? I asked as I approached my former teacher. I don't really care, but manners are important. I've been better. I'd be doing much better if I still had a class to teach, preferably one without traitors in it, he said as his eyes narrowed and he prepared to attack. I sighed before tilting my head to the side to dodge a punch from a severed hand. I proceeded to jump over a swipe from an enlarged fist before ducking under a jab from an earphone jack. Kendo, Takage, Gyro. I listed off their names before turning around to face them. How exactly can I help you three? You can help us by turning yourself in, Kendo stated while preparing to fight, preferably without us having to duke it out. I'd prefer not to fight a former classmate regardless of circumstances. Takage added, please just come back to us, Momo. Gyro pleaded despite looking ready to fight. Gyro, going back to you implies that I was one of you, and that was never the case, I said coldly with the intention of breaking her spirit before the fight even began. If that's the case, then how do you explain us? How do you explain what happened between us? Answer me, Momo. I could tell she desperately wanted to believe that I was manipulated or that I was a villain against my will. How would I describe it, you ask? It was a mistake, plain and simple, I said with an indifferent expression. With that one statement, her resolve crumbled as she rushed towards me. Her attacks were wild and uncoordinated, no doubt due to her wild emotions. After dodging attacks and putting distance between myself and my 4 opponents, Kendo decided to speak up. Give up, Momo. Even you can't take on all 4 of us at once, she said, clearly confident that I was at a disadvantage. Very well, let's follow this misguided assumption that I can't defeat all 4 of you. All I would need to do is hold you off until my crew made their way here, I said, negating her rationalization of my surrender. They still seem confident in defeating me, unfortunately. What fools. Izuku POV. It's good to be the king. After having my political insiders draft up a document that once signed would transfer all political and military power to me, all that needed to be done was have people sign it. Needless to say, my power to control people's body made the signing unanimous. I then proceeded to execute everyone who openly defied me and kept an eye on those who would oppose me in a more subtle way. Now all I need to do is televise my succession of the throne. It might take the people a little getting used to seeing, as Japan always had an emperor before, but a new era calls for a new tradition. Attention, citizens of Japan. My name is Izuku Midorya. Shouto POV. Although the heroes and police prefer to call me Joker. You did it, Izuku. You finally did it, I said with nothing but pride in my voice. The FS going on half and half, the blonde boy shouted. I could only smirk at his confusion. You've lost. Compress POV. They call me and my family villains, yet we are the ones protecting you innocent citizens from them, not the other way around. Ha ha ha, that man really knows how to put on a show, doesn't he, gang? I laughed as I clapped my hands. Explain yourself, Compress. What's the meaning of this? This broadcast means we've won, and you, my nemesis, have lost. Dabi POV. Each of you have seen the destruction these so-called heroes cause in the name of justice. You made it, little brother. You succeeded where others would have failed, I said, not even trying to hide the pride in my voice and the tear that slipped down my face. What's he doing? Why is he broadcasting this? Doesn't he know that this just tells Mirio where he is? Hato asked in quick succession. Mirio Tagata is no longer of any consequence. None of you heroes are. Tomoko POV. Their complete disregard for others has taken the lives of family members and destroyed homes. We've lost, haven't we? Maruko said with a surprisingly calm voice. Yes, you have. Nito POV. The French Revolution, the American Civil War, the rise and fall of the Soviet Union. I laughed maniacally until I could barely breathe, and then I laughed some more. I caught a glimpse of the horror and confusion on their faces. This caused me to laugh even harder. I'm sure they had questions, but their voices have been drowned out by our victory. Ibara POV. When dissatisfaction reaches its peak, society undergoes a drastic change to rid itself of its dissatisfaction. I fell to my knees and clasped my hands in prayer. God's will has been enacted at last. What's going on? What's he saying? Shiozaki. Tetsu roared. Poison Ivy, what is the meaning of this? The ninja hero inquired. Victory is ours. Toru POV. This change is not without hardship. However, woohoo, you go Joker, I cheered. Toru, why's he giving this speech? He's acting as if he's won already. Mina said, clearly confused. That's because he has. Isn't that right, Hagakure? Snipe said somberly. Bingo. Momo POV. I believe that you, the people of Japan, have the strength to overcome the hardship necessary for this broken society where villains protect citizens from heroes to rebuild itself. You always did have a way with words, Izuku. I'm so happy I fell in love with you, I said as my voice overflowed with love and admiration. Takage held Gyro as she broke down crying. Why's he making such a big spectacle? That just makes him a target, Kendo asked. Aizawa looked at the ground and said it doesn't matter how big of a show he puts on. He's already won. General POV. The Japanese government signed its political and military power over to me in a unanimous vote. Join your new king in taking the first step into this new era. With that statement, everything came crashing down. The vigilante group comprised of Knuckleduster, Popstep, and Crawler tried to launch a sneak attack on Shadow, only to be caught off guard by an attack from Aokiji. Katsuki's cry of despair gave the executive the opening needed to roast the blonde explosion user alive. Katsuki's last thoughts were ones of regret because he knew that if he treated Izuku differently, none of this would have come to pass. Transporter appeared behind Gang Orca and shot 7 bullets into his back, which allowed Compress to turn the pro into a marble and crush it. Maruko blocked a sneak attack from Jabra, but Tomoko attacked her from behind and ripped out her heart. Hado got caught in between Dabi's blue flames and Sakazuki's magma, while Daz and Himiko slaughtered Best Jeanist with their blades. Ban snapped Kaibara's neck with one hand and choked Yanagi to death with the other, while Nito used all of his armament haki to punch a hole through Amajiki's chest. Pamela created a carnivorous plant that devoured Kodai in edge shot, while Ibara ripped Tetsu in half using her haki-empowered vines. Absalom snuck behind Shoji and slit his throat just as Toru threw a knife into Mina's and Snipe's head. Momo shot Takage in the head while Hawkeyes cut Kendo and Aizawa into pieces. She then straddled Gyro and strangled her to death so she could watch the life leave the girl's eyes. Izuku POV. I saw Mount Lady throw Mirio towards me just before Stain and Spinner jumped out from nearby buildings and stabbed her eyes. Mirio landed right in front of me. Do you think you've won, Joker? The pro said with venom in his voice. I don't think I've won. I know I've won, I said as my grin widened with every word. This set One for All successor off as he rushed towards me. I activated my awakening and started launching pillars of strings at him. He definitely avoided them better than Overhaul and Night Eye did. Granted, it was much easier since his attacks created gusts of air pressure so he could launch himself around. He got past my awakening several times and we would duke it out until I could put distance between us again. The guy was good, I'll give him that. He could match me blow for blow, which took all might and all for one working together to do. We were both bruised and bleeding with our clothes in tatters. Unfortunately for him, I was done playing around. General POV. 16 rounds of holy ammunition, Izuku said as pillars of strings gathered around him. Mirio wound back his arm and said United States of God Thread. The crime lord shouted as he launched the haki-coated string pillars at the successor to the symbol of peace. SMNANSH. He roared as his fist collided with Izuku's strings. Their ultimate attack stalemated for 2 full minutes until Mirio started being pushed back as the strings dug into his fist. The pro was not deterred, however, as he pushed through the pain and broke through the strings as his ultimate move passed down to him from All Might connected with the newly crowned tyrant's face. Once the dust settled, Izuku had his back to the ground while Mirio remained standing. The pro was breathing heavily and was more injured than he had ever been in his life. It was all worth it though. He had come out on top. He succeeded where All Might had failed, and corrected the mistake that was Izuku Midorya. Or so he thought. Izuku's voice first came out as a small chuckle, which soon grew into a symphony of maniacal laughter. Mirio's triumphant expression dropped as Izuku Joker Midorya picked himself up from the rubble with the biggest, most terrifying smile the world has ever seen. What, is that all you got? The king said before twitching his finger and beheading Mirio Tagata. Izuku laughed once more as Stain and Spinner dumped Mount Lady's enlarged head at his feet before walking away to continue their hunt. Time skip. And that is the story of how I became king. Izuku, you became king yesterday. The only reason your injuries are even healed is because Doc Q is good at what he does. Dabi said, confused as to why his brother told them the story they all lived through. I for one think it was a great story. Momo said as she cuddled her boyfriend. You're such a suck-up, Momo. Toru shot at her sister with an invisible smirk on her face. I am not. Unfortunately for her, the other executives all sided with Toru, until Izuku piped up, though she just wants a ring on her finger. Speaking of which, Momo, will you marry me? The emerald-eyed emperor said while pulling out a ring. Momo answered by slipping the ring on and making out with her new fiancé. Using his strings, Izuku created a sign that read "Get on with it, losers," which prompted the other non-married males to propose to their respective girlfriends. Doc Q, being the royal minister and doctor, pronounced everyone man and wife right then and there. From that day forward, the Midoriya family worked towards building society back up. Toru and Absalom worked with their crew as silencers that stopped rebellions before they started with the help of Calculator and all of the info brokers they had at their disposal. The other executives became enforcers that made sure Izuku's will was carried out. Japan had entered a new era and the citizens really didn't mind. They saw a flawed system fall and give rise to a new one. Izuku did not forget his roots, however. The first thing he did was do away with quirkless discrimination by revealing all of the quirkless members of his organization, one of which was the Queen's lieutenant. He also made a day of remembrance for his mother, who always stuck by him. He knew she wouldn't approve of his methods, but he would always love her and remember her. Over the years, Izuku's family grew with the birth of new children, Dabi and Toga's son Natsuo. Named after his brother who kept the Todoroki name, had Dabi's original reed hair and Himiko's golden eyes. His quirk allowed him to produce a blood-red flame that causes hallucinations as well as burns. Shoto and Toru had a daughter they named Rei after Shoto's mother. She had blonde hair and gray eyes, with a quirk that allowed he to create invisible flames. Compress and Tomoko had a son named Kota after Tomoko's beloved nephew and a daughter named Shino after her surviving sister. Kota had Tomoko's old quirk and Shino had a quirk that allowed her to create audio-visual illusions based on eye contact. Nito and Ibara had a daughter named Teresa, after the saint, who had blonde hair and black eyes with a quirk that allowed her to produce vines from any part of her body. Izuku and Momo decided not to have any children. They believed that Eri was the only child they would ever want to call theirs. Eri burst into tears when she heard and cried about how much she loved her mama and papa. Izuku started as quirkless nobody. Over time he became a petty thug, a gang leader, and a crime lord. Now he was king and he intended to extend the love he shared with his family to the citizens under his rule. The heroes and citizens of old would have called him a tyrant. The citizens of the current era call him their beloved king. Most importantly of all, though, to his family he's just Izuku Midorya, the best brother, uncle, father, and husband anyone could ask for. The end. Okay, sadly the chapter is over. And if you enjoyed the video, just leave a like and subscribe with post notification, so when the next chapter is ready, you will be notified. Okay, see you in the next video. Bye.